Chapter 616. Tang Tian sent eldest young noble and Ling Xia out. Han Sen was speechless. He had never seen He Ying before, but in the past few years, there had been countless of rumors about He Ying. He was narrow-minded, cruel and unbridled. Everyone knew of him. Thinking about the conflict between Master and He Ying, Han Sen felt that his suggestion was extremely stupid. That sky-high bounty made everyone believe that He Ying was a tyrant, and not just any ordinary tyrant. He shook his head. He had to put aside the complicated questions and let Uncle Bing and Crane, the more intelligent people, think about it. He reminded Richard to keep it a secret. But what worried him the most was that they would expose themselves. If the Honorable Martial Continent knew that they came from Heaven's Road, they would definitely take them down at all costs. They were still weak and were in a dangerous situation. Such a scale of strongholds was definitely not something that could be done in a day. Bu Zifei hated that he could not kill the intelligence personnel on his side. Such a large stronghold, did they just make it out of nothing? If not for Bu Zifei sensing that something was amiss and rushing over, it would be hard to say if Long Nan would still be alive. He turned his head and saw Han Sen's worried look and asked, "What's with your expression?" Tang Tian asked back, "Do you think He Ying will let us go?" Tang Tian was thinking about another matter. Richard's investigation of the 13 families had some progress. Out of the 13 families, other than one family that went to the western region, 7 of them moved to the Gold Continent. The other 5 families were all in the White Sands continent. He was extremely hesitant. Bu Zifei looked at the 10 men left in front of him, his face ashen. He did not underestimate the enemy at all, but he never thought that on the battlefield he would realize that the enemy was much more terrifying than he had imagined. But the enemy only had 3 people and they were actually able to kill them all. At the start he only thought that they had a common enemy, but he realized that he was thinking too simply. He could not retreat, but he had sufficient patience. The enemy's standard was truly surprising. He had been in White Sands City for many years and had a lot of information, so how could he not know about the fight between the 2 parties? Bing scratched his chin deep in thought. But when they reached their destination and saw the majestic Sword Forest stronghold, everyone could not help but gasp. The eldest young noble was here to invite Tang Tian to participate in the Continent Lord's banquet, because the White Sands continent had recently gathered a large number of influential officials from various continents, and the Continent Lord, who had always stayed in his own residence, decided to host a large-scale banquet. Bu Zifei took a deep breath. He regained his composure. He suddenly had a premonition that the battle would not be easy. However, this did not discourage him. Instead, it aroused his fighting spirit. Sun Jie had the backing of the Sun family, but he didn't. Bu Zifei, who was born as a commoner, knew that the reason why he was able to sit in his current position was because of his military achievements. Furthermore, there was the Sword Forest stronghold. But even so, the vanguard unit still suffered heavy losses. He looked around and saw that the soldiers around him had looks of fear on their faces. The vanguard unit was the most arrogant and despotic group of people in the 7th Army, and was also the strongest group of people. They were the most elite unit of the 7th Army with outstanding military achievements. The towering sword stronghold released dazzling light auras, like light swords pointing to the sky. They were densely packed and filled with killing intent. No worries, it's just a banquet. Tang Tian did not think much of it. What made Tang Tian even more surprised was that the 5 families had an extremely high position in the White Sands continent. When they had just moved to the White Sands continent, the White Sands continent was besieged by pirates, and the 5 families risked their lives to help the White Sands continent repel the pirates, and were bestowed the title by the Continent Lord at that time. At that time, the 5 families had already concealed their identities. Although they had great merits, they did not flaunt it, and instead used their authority to clean up all the clues. Tang Tian had a headache about how to interact with the 5 families. Do the 5 families know of the existence of Heaven's Road? If they don't, how can I explain it to them? Will they believe me? Will I expose myself? Can he rush back if I tell them? Bing replied without turning his head. He has important things to do over there. The precious Bright Village Regiment's strength is truly inferior to them, but if we are in the Sword Forest stronghold and are still killed by this army, then I will just kill myself. Long Nan's strength was unparalleled. He was just half a step away from the Silver Realm, and was definitely a powerful general on the battlefield, but the opponent had only used one sword to injure him. And inside the Sword Forest stronghold, they had sufficient manpower and he was not worried about being surrounded. He had been training the precious Bright Village Regiment for the past few days, and their synchronization rate had finally reached a level that Bing felt was acceptable. Bing's words were extremely arrogant, but no one felt that he was boasting. He was originally a famous general, and as long as he took action he would be invincible. His standard was so high that even the arrogant Tang Chou had to admit that he was inferior. Along the way they advanced extremely cautiously. The scouts were like flowing water, constantly investigating the situation around them. But everyone knew that after the matter, Meng Nan would definitely be hated by He Ying, and both parties would not have any leeway. The anticipated sneak attack did not happen, and the entire 7th Army heaved a sigh of relief. To the Sword Forest stronghold, it was the most important period of time. It's the 7th Army. The one who spoke was an old man that Bing had selected from the 36th Army. His face was gloomy. The 7th Army's general is Bu Zifei. He is extremely cautious and strict. His standard is extremely high. The 7th Army is a silver rank army and is highly valued. Bu Zifei does not have any background, and relied on his military achievements to reach this stage. In the past, this subordinate had heard of a saying, that if Bu Zifei was not burdened by his family background just based on his strength, he could be ranked in the top 3. Tang Tian, oh, so it's like that. Move out. The current precious Bright Village Regiment did not have much hope, but to use them to defend the city he was rather assured. It was just 3 people, but they had practically wiped out the entire Vanguard unit, and Long Nan was heavily injured, causing the morale of the Vanguard unit to drop to rock bottom. I need to think of a way to completely keep the 7th Army here. Will the 5 families have any thoughts about Heaven's Road? Crane turned and asked Bing, do we really not need to inform Crazy Tang? The situation in White Sands continent was clear to everyone. Eldest Young Noble was here to ask for reinforcements. Although they did not know what Eldest Young Noble and Meng Nan were talking about, but everyone could roughly guess. What did Meng Nan have? Money. Although Meng Nan had a few elites by his side, but they did not have much of an influence on the situation. The only thing that could make Eldest Young Noble worry about was money, and everyone needed money bags. Eldest Young Noble's visit caused many people to keep quiet. Tang Tian did not care about attending banquets or whatnot. Han Sen hesitated for a moment. Master, you do not know, He Ying and Lady Ro have been working together for many years, and Eldest Young Noble's strength has been greatly reduced. Everyone is saying that Eldest Young Noble will not be able to hold on for long. Currently, close to 70% of the aristocratic families in the continent have joined He Ying. Such experts for 3 of them to appear at the same time, and the 3 of them were extremely well coordinated. Where did they come from? The 5 families had been concealing their strength and biding their time for so many years, and their current strength was not to be looked down upon. He was thinking about a deeper question he had asked before. There were only 8 silver-grade armies in the vast star continent, and the destruction of Sun Jie's 8th army only made the vast star continent feel some pain. But if Bu Zifei's 7th army were to be destroyed as well, then it would truly be a huge blow. The most elite silver-grade armies, to lose a quarter of their strength in one go, was not as simple as just feeling pain. For the sake of being grand, the location of the banquet was the Sand Continent's garden, which was the Continent Lord's private garden. Set up camp. The series of questions caused Tang Tian to have a headache. The 7th Army spread out in the sky, like a regiment of black clouds. They headed towards the Sword Forest stronghold. Bu Zifei had done his homework and had long found out the location of the enemy's base, although he did not understand why the enemy would build the stronghold at the river bank where even birds would not shit. Master is wise. Han Sen immediately said, if not for Master Suo by supporting Eldest Young Noble, I am afraid that Eldest Young Noble would have long. Everyone nodded their heads. They did not know how strong Bu Zifei was, but from the looks of it he was definitely an elite. Bu Zifei quickly made a decision. He had never seen the stronghold in front of him before, so he decided to observe and probe, to see if the stronghold was just for show or if it was something else. Inside the Sword Forest stronghold, Bing and the rest were observing the enemy. They would definitely be badly injured. At that time, the vast star continent would not have the time to care about them, and there would definitely be many people who would take advantage of the situation. The Sword Forest stronghold would be able to gain sufficient breathing space. The expensive black gold would bring them sufficient wealth, and with the 2 armies that Tang Tian had bought, Shursen could replenish the underworld continent's demonic mounts, and at that time, their strength would have a qualitative leap. The war had become the one he was most unwilling to fight. Although the 7th Army was strong, but sieging a stronghold was not their advantage. If it was an ordinary stronghold he would not be too worried, but the scale of the stronghold made him feel that it was troublesome. I wonder how Uncle Bing and the rest from the Shang continent are doing, Tang Tian thought. Tang Tian's money did not go to waste. Richard still managed to find a few precious clues. If these clues were placed in other people's hands, they would most likely be confused, but in Richard's hands, it caused him to be roused and he quickly locked onto the 5 families. The Sword Forest stronghold was formed from Sai Lei's blood and sweat. It was forged with black gold, with star treasures guarding it and a treasure city. Even Bing, who had always had his eyes on the top, and even he himself was not willing to touch such a stronghold. Can't you see Su Jin's fawning look? Even the shopkeeper of the Su Ji Worldwide Commerce is so fawning, who would doubt his wealth? The entire 7th Army sunk into a strange silence. Bu Zifei was in a daze. The scale of the stronghold in front of him was completely different from what he had reported. It was not a stronghold but an entire stronghold. The light auras were connected together and resonated with each other. Long Nan's face was pale white, his heart was filled with shock and fear. No one was clearer than him on the danger he was in. The cold and strange mental attack, the swordsman who had gained enlightenment on laws, the spear auras that were like a torrential rain of stars that no one could block. Any one of them were experts amongst experts and were stronger than him. Chapter 6:17. She was not worried about Tang Tian's safety at all. Along the way there were guards from the Ling family, and the banquet was even more heavily guarded. Meng Nan's own strength was extremely powerful, and it was definitely not an easy task to make a move on him. How dare you? Chief Steward Chu of the Continent Lord Manor respectfully bowed. He knew that this young man in front of him was a ruthless character. With a perfect smile on his face he complimented, "Mr. Meng's brilliance, it seems like everyone will be amazed tonight. I wonder how many beauties will be attracted by Mr. Meng. Don't you think entering the city sounds awesome?" Tang Tian asked. He waited for a while but there was no movement behind him. What was this guy doing? Xianxia was enraged. She turned her head and was dumbstruck. I can't even reason with this idiot. He did not even blink his eyes as he smeared Crane and Magic Flute's name. Why did they have to be more handsome than him? When the Continent Lord and Madame Rowe walked into the hall, this was what they saw. The Continent Lord revealed an unhappy expression. Madame Rowe's expression did not change much other than a flash of surprise in her eyes. Tang Tian buried his head in eating. Xianxia, who was by the side, laughed till her stomach hurt. You can bring 20 guards with you. Xianxia added. Of course these guards are unable to enter the gardens and can only stand guard outside. Xianxia felt as though she was sitting on pins and needles. She came from an aristocratic family and had long been trained in etiquette. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Tang Tian's action, coupled with the disdainful and mocking gazes, made her face flush red. Xianxia was once again speechless. There was a voice roaring in her heart. That's completely fallacious reasoning. But how could she refute him? Xianxia suddenly realized that she did not know how to refute, and this made her go crazy. That's right, you're a big shot. Xiaxia's tone was resolute and decisive to the point that she wanted to vomit, but she still maintained a serious expression. But you see, all important figures pay attention to their bearing, pay attention to their demeanor. Even if everyone has a blood feud on the surface, they are all amiable. Drawing one's sword over a disagreement is the behavior of a boorish man. Tang Tian did not know that the Shang continent was currently fighting intensely. He was currently dressed in a suit and leather shoes and looked around awkwardly. Looking at Han Sen's insistence, Tang Tian helplessly said, "All right, I'll follow the customs of the city." Xianxia was startled. Think about it. Big shots are all very powerful. Is holding back something a big shot would do? Tang Tian proudly patted his chest and said, "What we big shots do is that whoever dares to provoke us will be beaten to the ground with one punch and crushed with one foot. We will kill one as a warning to the others and kill the monkey to warn the chicken." 2 consecutive roars sounded out, causing Xianxia to jump in fright. She turned her head and upon seeing the 2 people her face changed. "More powerful? Then I won't." Tang Tian waved his hand. Hansen said with certainty, "Yes, sir. It had to be so. Without a doubt, you will be one of the most eye-catching protagonists of this banquet. Etiquette is an indispensable respect." Alright, the main thing was that he no longer had any spare suits, so he decided not to touch them. The servant nearby could not help but chuckle. Manager Chu's eyes flashed with a strange look, but he quickly revealed a smile again. I believe that everyone will get to know Mr. Meng again tonight. Both of you, please. Do you know what a big shot is? Tang Tian extended out a finger and scoffed. It is to quickly repay kindness and enmity, to not let the night pass, to take revenge when there is enmity, to seek revenge when there is no enmity. Impudent. Xianxia was dumbstruck. Too ruthless. Xianxia suddenly felt a huge pressure on her. She had a heavy responsibility. Although she did not understand why her father and eldest young noble valued Meng Nan so much, but she knew the severity of the matter. Yes, that's him. If not for him, the market would not be in such a mess. Sitting in the Ling family's small boat, Tang Tian felt as though he was tied up like a dumpling, and was extremely uncomfortable. To Tang Tian, who was used to wearing battle clothes, the fitted black suit was not comfortable at all. But hearing Xia's words, he replied in disdain, "This sort of thing that relies on one's face to make a living, is something that only little crane and magic flute do. Godlike young lads rely on their fists to do the talking." The moment Tang Tian appeared, there was a momentary silence in the venue. Xia had already decided during the banquet she would definitely not leave his side. Tang Tian felt that Xia was spouting nonsense. Lion King Leong Temple, the 12 ecliptic palaces, which one of them did not pull out their blades at the slightest disagreement. Tang Tian had fought and killed for so many years, but had never heard of such a thing. Xia turned pale with fright and immediately pulled on Tang Tian. Tang Tian did not care. Xia looked towards the direction of the continent lord. Tang Tian followed Xia's gaze and was enlightened. He nodded his head. Welcome, Mr. Meng. Although he did not intend to rely on his face to make a living, but to be praised as handsome, Tang Tian was extremely pleased, and his foolish nature was immediately exposed. He struck a pose in front of Manager Chu. Is that so? Is that so? Very handsome, right? But very quickly, everyone realized that they had lost their composure, and immediately spoke loudly to cover up their awkwardness. But with so many people speaking at the same time, the entire place's volume suddenly rose, and everyone was shocked once again. Xia heaved a sigh of relief. She immediately stood up and prepared to bring Tang Tian to greet the continent lord. Although she did not know who the little crane and magic flute that Tang Tian was talking about were, Xia could roughly guess, but she could not help but remind Tang Tian, "This is your first time coming to such a place. You must remember, no matter what happens, do not use your fists to solve the problem." Xia's mind could not help but think, wait a minute, how did I get brainwashed by him? Tang Tian, who was focused on eating his cake, was caught off guard. His hand trembled and half of the cake fell to the ground. He stared blankly at the cake that fell to the ground. His face immediately became gloomy. Compared to those people, the food in front of him was more to his liking. Oh no, I will definitely do that. On the contrary, Xia, who was seated opposite Tang Tian's, eyes lit up. Tang Tian's physique was tyrannical, but he was not big. On the contrary, his physique was well proportioned. There was nothing special about him usually, but after wearing his suit he looked extremely tall and slender, with an extraordinary heroic aura. Tang Tian's expression was somewhat stiff. If it was placed on other people, it would be extremely uncoordinated, but Tang Tian's body was filled with killing intent, forming an indescribable coldness. As expected, you have never seen any important figures. Tang Tian said proudly. How can killing the chicken to warn the monkey be as powerful as killing the monkey to warn the chicken? If the monkey is killed, would the chicken still dare to move? Tang Tian sat there like a wooden puppet, not moving an inch. He was afraid that he would accidentally tear his clothes. Han Sen had warned him that the fabric of his clothes was not very sturdy, and Tang Tian, who was careless, had already damaged 3 sets of suits, which made him understand how fragile the clothes were. This also gave him another bad impression. Cutting corners and cutting corners. Tang Tian said loudly, "Relax, relax, it is such a simple matter to this godlike young lad, it is a piece of cake." Xia did not object. All right. All right. Han Sen heaved a sigh of relief. "Master, please remember, your movements must be small, your movements must be slow, and your strength must be light." The main venue was a spacious lawn, filled with tables and chairs. The lights were bright as though it was daytime. At the moment, many people had already arrived. All of them were in groups of 3 to 5, holding wine cups in their hands, chatting and laughing. Yes, do not use force. Xia explained patiently. All the people here are important figures, we need to be careful. Han Sen felt that he was too stupid to argue with the master on this matter. Seeing the food on the table, Tang Tian's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he sat down and started wolfing down the food. Why are you looking at me like that? Tang Tian had an innocent look on his face. Tang Tian's mouth was stuffed with cream cake. He stared at Xia with his eyes wide open, not understanding what was going on. The discussions around him were filled with fear and restraining fear. On the contrary, the discussions of the ladies were much more pleasant to listen to. Although Tang Tian was not considered handsome, but he had a tall and slender body, with the killing intent that he had experienced for a long time, it made him stand out amongst the group of pot-bellied nobles. What if this fellow really got into a fight at the banquet because of a disagreement? Such delicious food to only encounter it today. Countless of gazes of disdain immediately shot over. For Tang Tian to not care about his image when eating in the eyes of these people, it was a display of lack of upbringing and quality. This is the nouveau riche surnamed Meng? Are you sure you want to wear this? Tang Tian was extremely uncomfortable. Tang Tian glared at Xia and spoke in an extremely unsatisfied tone. I am the big shot. Saying that Tang Tian was not a big shot, Xia suspected that he would do something stupid. To find a big shot to fight and prove that he was a big shot, Xia did not doubt that the fool in front of her would do such a thing. To find a big shot to fight and prove that he was a big shot, Xia did not doubt that the fool in front of her would do such a thing. Where did he get so much money from? The night had just fallen, the lanterns were lit, the grass, pavilions, buildings, waterside pavilions were filled with delicacies and wine, with well-dressed servants shuttling back and forth. Oh my God! Xia subconsciously corrected him. It's killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Xia stopped. She noticed that Tang Tian was looking at her weirdly and asked, What? Xia covered her face. She wanted to find a hole to hide in. Xia was speechless. She did not know how to reply. It was an outdoor banquet. Xia facepalmed. She suddenly felt that accompanying Tang Tian to the banquet was a mistake. But the arrow was already on the bowstring. She had no choice but to release it. She had no way out. Actually, I feel that it's not bad. Xia laughed. At least you are handsome. I reckon that you will be able to charm many girls tonight. The courtyard also needed people to guard it, and in the past few days, there were many people sneaking around outside the courtyard. If they were not careful, they would be in trouble. Ignoring everything else, just little Richard's laboratory was not something that money could buy. Thinking about it, Xia felt a chill down her spine. No, I can't let that happen. She took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. Moreover, she resolved that she would definitely stay by this fellow's side to avoid anything unexpected from happening. The person who invented these clothes should be stabbed to death. Tang Tian was extremely hateful and even used Ling Su's catchphrase. Then what should I use? Tang Tian frowned. I am not proficient in other weapons. Master, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Han Sen corrected him. He was a tactful person, but he had been the manager of the hotel for a long time, and his obsession with etiquette was almost instinctive. Chapter 6:18. Qin Yuran had entered Meng Nan's residence a few times, and this was not news in White Sands City. Gong Chen believed that no matter where he went he would always be dazzling, and no matter how famous Qin Yuran was she would still give him some face. His intuition was extremely sharp. Gong Chen's gaze was cold, his entire body releasing killing intent, making him look like a venomous snake in the darkness. Tang Tian was not afraid at all. He was eager to give it a try. Xia was anxious. If Gong Chen were to accuse them, then the continent lord's impression of Mr. Meng would be extremely bad. She could not help but say, how can Imperial Guard Gong speak such nonsense? Mr. Meng is just protecting himself. Gong Chen's sword trembled, and the sword transformed into a rain of insects, bringing forth a bone-chilling rustling sound. They pounced towards Tang Tian. The entire place immediately erupted with ridicule. Gong Chen's flying posture was elegant and graceful, but Tang Tian's flying posture in everyone's eyes was extremely ugly. A few sharp-eyed people immediately noticed that Meng Nan did not use energy but compressed air. Could he be an energy impediment? Tang Tian, who was swimming around Gong Chen, also revealed a look of caution. Gong Chen's body did not have any weak points, Regardless of which angle he tried to attack from, he would always be within the range of Gong Chen's unsheathed sword. The rustling sound of insects became louder and louder, and the sense of danger in Tang Tian's heart became even more intense. The shattered auras that floated out from the Ignis tree slowly floated and danced in the air, like fireflies in the middle of summer. It was like a dream. Tang Tian, who was surrounded by fireflies, did not have any killing intent, but was extremely calm and peaceful. Tang Tian stared at the two people in front of him with an unkind expression. Tang Tian had already forgotten about the cake. The fighting intent in his body was boiling. All of his attention was focused on the battle. Qin Yuran had long entered the competition grounds, but she was at the other end of the garden with a group of young ladies. She did not like being with a group of men. All of them had gazes that looked as though they wanted to swallow her up, and she did not like it. Seeing Gong Chen and Meng Nan facing off in the sky, her face changed. Tang Tian knew that he had to attack. Gong Chen's mouth curled into an indiscernible sinister smile. Furthermore, when he thought of He Ying's promise, his heart was on fire. Bai Yu sighed. Meng Nan is still too young and fell for it easily. Looks like I'll have to exercise a little tonight. I believe my old face still has some use. The Continent Lord muttered, those who come are guests, but since both of you want to exchange pointers, then don't go overboard. Don't hurt the harmony. Xianxia wanted to retort, but Tang Tian stood up impatiently. Hey, do you want to fight? The one on the left was a handsome man in his 30s. His name was Gong Chen and he was deeply trusted by the Continent Lord. He was the Continent Lord's personal guard. The beautiful woman on the right was called Zhou Xian, and she was Lady Rose's maid. When the two of them flew up to the surface of the lake, they immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. His plan was very successful. The other party was even more stupid than he had imagined, easily falling into his trap. And with everyone present standing on his side, if he accidentally killed Meng Nan, no one would blame him. It was Tang Tian's first time encountering such a situation, and his face became gloomy. So fast. Gong Chen's sword was completely unsheathed, and only then did Tang Tian see clearly that Gong Chen's sword was actually formed from countless of tiny transparent insects. He took a deep breath. Since you don't have any flaws, then I will attack you until you do. If there was anything that Tang Tian hated the most, it would be being disturbed when he was eating. Xianxia had thought that something would happen, but she never thought that it would happen so quickly. Especially when she saw the two people who shouted out, she knew that it was not good. He flew to the sky above the lake. There was enough space for both parties to fight without affecting the competition grounds. He pretended to be humiliated and enraged, but his heart was ice cold. Bai Yu was surprised. His nephew looked to be humble on the surface, but in his bones he was extremely arrogant. He never thought that he would have such confidence in Meng Nan, causing him to be surprised. Gong Chen was extremely calm. The Meng Nan in front of him was like an oppressive wild beast. He squinted his eyes, his hand on the sword hilt at his waist. For the battle, he had made meticulous arrangements, and had even privately discussed with Xiao Ian. He had made preparations for Meng Nan's attack. Gong Chen's face flushed red. To be humiliated in front of so many people, how could he endure it? His eyes were about to bleed. He immediately pleaded to the Continent Lord. Mr. Meng has invited me to fight. How can my White Sands not have anyone? This subordinate requests to fight. Xiao Yian's face changed. He was overwhelmed with shock. This guy's speed is even faster than the last time. Could it be that he held back the last time? He felt that it wasn't the case, but if it wasn't, then in just a few days he had such an obvious improvement. This guess made him even more restless. He had persevered and trained bitterly for the past few days, and after fighting with Xiao Ian he felt that it was not enough. The aura that Gong Chen was releasing today was not inferior to Xiao Ian at all. The two sentences that he said to me left a deep impression on me. Bai Xiao continued. The first sentence was, sweat does not lie. The second sentence was, he still has many things that he wants to do. Although Gong Chen is strong, but I do not believe that Brother Meng will not be able to retaliate. Bai Zhao's expression congealed. He stared at the two people in the sky and shook his head. Second uncle's words make it sound like Brother Meng will definitely lose, but I think Brother Meng will win. Tang Tian shivered. A sense of danger surfaced in his mind. The rustling sound was somewhat strange. Without any hesitation he stepped forward and like lightning he disappeared into the air. Who knew that when he invited Qin Yuran a few times, she would tactfully reject him. The women around her had long since exploded. He extended his 10 fingers and a spark blossomed out from the void. It was growing at an astonishing speed. Fireworks. Noticing second uncle's gaze, Bai Xiao spoke softly. Don't forget he is the one who defeated Lian Bojun. Hearing that, the continent lord was surprised. He turned and asked Lady Ro. Lady Ro replied softly. Although Qin Yuran did not like Gongchen, but she knew that Gongchen was definitely strong. To be able to become the continent lord's most trusted personal guard, how could he be weak? When he saw Meng Nan, the anger in his heart soared uncontrollably. He purposely used words to provoke Meng Nan, and wanted to form the current situation. To others he was unable to endure the humiliation and counterattack. Furthermore, he had sinister intentions and directly pointed out Meng Nan's identity as a foreigner, causing the White Sands people to naturally share the same hatred. Yes. Gongchen bowed and replied. He raised his head and looked at Tang Tian, his gaze filled with killing intent. Mr. Meng, please. Gongchen then took a step forward and said coldly, Mr. Meng has caused chaos in White Sands City, causing blood to flow like a river, forcing the Public Security Bureau to not dare open their doors. I initially thought that you were someone important, but I never expected you to be so vulgar, truly disappointing. Tang Tian did not understand what was going on. He had never seen him before. Why did he show such strong hostility towards him the moment he appeared? Although Tang Tian was not smart enough, his intuition was sharp and he could feel the intense hostility from the other party. He had long heard from Qiao Yi in that Meng Nan's teleportation method was unique. It was as fast as lightning and he was prepared for it, but he never thought that the other party's speed would be faster than him. What? Guard Gong is so handsome. A look of unhappiness flashed past the continent lord's face. Tang Tian was expressionless as he used his unique Gong Ba to soar into the sky. Tang Tian was like a twisting bolt of lightning, continuously striking and rebounding in the sky. His astonishing speed caused Gongchen to feel immense pressure. Tang Tian's gaze turned solemn. He gently waved his hand, and the fireflies that filled the sky flew towards the rain of insects. Self-protection? Gongchen snorted. Spending a few billion to protect yourself? Forcing the Public Security Bureau to not dare open their doors. You call that self-protection? Could it be that Miss Ling thinks that Mr. Meng is actually as weak as a flower? Seeing that the other party was standing there like a wooden pole, Tang Tian had a look of disdain. So you are just a mouth cannon. I can finally see Guard Gong in action. I am so excited. Where? Bai Yu asked subconsciously. On the other side, the uncle and nephew of the Bai family also had looks of worry. The training grounds. Bai Xiao looked at Tang Tian, who was in the sky, and muttered, that battle was extremely difficult. Even the warship's weapons were unable to withstand the pressure and crumbled. All of us were rejoicing that we survived, but Brother Meng and his bodyguards were actually sweating profusely in the training grounds. In truth, at that time, I did not have any other thoughts, only shame and admiration. Everyone around started to chuckle. Gong Chen's eyes turned cold. He slowly unsheathed his sword. Sha sha sha, the sword blade rubbed against the sword sheath, producing a sound that sounded like countless of insects crawling. Today you must die here. Gong Chen was startled. Xianxia was also startled. Even the people around were startled. To be able to enter the competition grounds, all of them were people with status and position. When had they ever seen a street thug challenging them? With the Bai family's intelligence, they had long investigated the background of the pirates. Lian Bojun was a famous person in the pirate circle. Such an ambitious and ruthless person was someone that even the Bai family did not dare to provoke. Gong Chen suppressed the shock in his heart. His heart was as calm as water, and he continued to slowly unsheath his sword. Bai Yu, who had a look of surprise, suddenly laughed out loud. Hearing you say that, I am even more excited for the battle. Many people had long heard of Meng Nan's martial techniques. It was exquisite and beautiful, but seeing it with their own eyes, all of their mouths were wide open and they were stunned. Bai Yu could not help but be moved. He was familiar with military affairs and knew that after a bitter battle, the most important thing for a person to do was to relax. To be able to persevere in training at such a time, his willpower and tenacity were rarely seen. That's true. Bai Yu nodded his head. Bai Xiao's reason was sufficient. Bai Xiao laughed bitterly. My confidence in Brother Meng is not just that. Out of all the people that I have met, Brother Meng's diligence is unparalleled. Can you think of where I found Lian Bojun on the second day after I defeated him? Xia felt that her father had miscalculated. Eldest young noble was enemies with Lady Ro and He Ying, but he definitely could not go against the continent lord. If he angered the continent lord, then eldest young noble's identity as the successor would become extremely dangerous. Big brother Meng. Gongchen lowered his body, his eyes staring straight ahead. In the sky, Tang Tian's eyes lit up as he stared at Gongchen. He did not have any other thoughts in his mind, and was too lazy to think about why Gongchen was hostile towards him. Chapter 619. The energy floating in the air became an endless supply of firewood, and the fireflies continued to ignite the firewood. In the sky above the lake, concentrated explosions and light spots continued to light up. It was the fireflies and white worms clashing, and every time they clashed it would produce sparks. In the night, billions of tiny sparks fell like a curtain of rain. The calm lake reflected this dreamy scene. The lake reflected the fireflies in the sky. Like stars in the sky, there were too many fireflies. The temperature of the air rose, and the heat wave caused the lake surface to be filled with mist. The flowers and trees in the garden quickly dried up and withered. Treacherous villain. Ling Su spat out. He had decided to maintain a distance with the poker face. If not, he would not know when he would be betrayed. The light auras of the fireflies were no longer weak. They had lit up the entire night sky, reflecting the pale faces of the people below. Bu Zifei's eyes immediately turned red. He bellowed, "Retreat." The synchronization rate of 60% was the lowest requirement for this technique. The compression of air and the terrifying strength of his physical body. Did he come from the savage continent? If not, I can swallow the remaining 100 people. What a pity. He then thought about Xian. Who knows where Xian is now? That slut is still as unreliable as before. He then thought about Screw and decided to wait for the battle to end and return to Three Spirits City to take a look, to see how the research on the light egg was going. Screw's recovery depended on it. Truly a tiring life. No one is free from worry. Bing muttered. He flicked the cigarette in his hand in a satisfied arc and left. His luck was good. Bing puffed out a smoke ring and looked at the enemies outside the city. This time they will stop for 2 days. Although Meng Nan was able to withstand Xiao Yian's sword, but he was in a difficult situation. Gongchen and Xiao Yian had privately discussed about Meng Nan's strength, and came to the conclusion that he was half a silver rank. Xiao Yian's conclusion was acknowledged by everyone: silver rank fighting techniques, but without enlightenment on energy transformation, naturally he was only half a silver rank. Damn it! The Demon King blazing fireflies that had not completely completed energy transformation were truly not the opponents of the white worms. Although the number of white worms could not compare to the fireflies, but they held the advantage. The light balls that flew in the air exploded at the same time, and every light ball exploded into a dense and fine light thorn. The piercing light instantly enveloped the entire group of fortresses. Tang Tian stared at Gongchen coldly. The silent null flames had already spread past his wrist and extended to 3 inches from his forearm. In this period of time he had trained bitterly every day, and the black gold accumulated in his blood meridians had been completely digested and absorbed, causing the null flames to become stronger. Pu-piu-piu. The low and deep explosion was like a heavy drum, fiercely beating on everyone's heart. And let's try a few more methods and see which martial technique is the most effective. Bu Zifei said calmly. He did not find it strange to be able to kill Sun Jie. How could the other party not have some skills? It was difficult for the light balls to hit these agile teams, but the attacks of the small teams were like tickles to the huge group of strongholds. There was not even a ripple on the energy barrier. Spreading Ghost King blazing firefly, the 3 spectators also heaved a sigh of relief. The most suitable weapon to attack strongholds were warships, as warship weapons were extremely powerful, but it was a pity that the Shang continent's estuary was too small, and warships were unable to enter. He had never thought of such a situation. Sun Jie's battle was an encounter, but he never thought that when it came to him, it would actually be a siege battle. He could only request for support from the sieging boats. He was shocked to realize that as time elapsed, not only did the fireflies in the sky not decrease, but instead increased. It was expanding. The quietly expanding Ghost King blazing fireflies had a size that could cover the entire lake. And what was even more shocking was that it was still expanding at an astonishing speed, like a gigantic beast that was growing at a berserk speed. 2 days. The adjutant immediately replied. Gong Chen stared at Tang Tian's fists, the gray flames lingering around him. Such a strange flame was something that the savage continent had never heard of before. The change was too sudden, the surrounding teams were caught off guard, and half of them were engulfed by the light thorns in the sky. But the strange group of strongholds still surprised him. He had seen many strongholds before, but it was the first time he had seen such a stronghold that no one could attack. His heart was in a perilous situation. The blood on Gong Chen's face immediately disappeared. But it was too late. Like a storm, it came and went quickly. A few seconds later, the sky full of light auras disappeared, and at the same time the teams that were patrolling also disappeared. As long as they were touched by the gray flames, their energy would be destroyed. Impossible. Bu Zifei's face was pale white. He bit his lips tightly and did not notice that blood was flowing out. Everything was silent. This order caused the cheers to become even louder. The remaining teams returned to their units in a daze, their morale low. That's right, he is truly a quasi-silver. The fireflies in the sky were actually burning balls of energy, and the burning was close to energy transformation, but it was still lacking. Very quickly, Qiao Yian's judgment was verified. It was like a gigantic fire cloud that was slowly moving. Other than the fireflies, he actually did not use any energy at all. He then asked, "How much longer until the sieging boats arrive?" He thought about the other group of amateurs. How are the mechanical army amateurs? Upon thinking about how they were under Tang Chou the battle maniac, he immediately felt much better. I was tricked. But the following battle completely toppled Gong Chen's knowledge. It was proof that he was a quasi-silver. Suddenly, a large number of light balls flew out from the strongholds. The number was at least 3 times more than before. Inside the Sword Forest stronghold, the cheers shook the heavens. The enemy's morale was greatly boosted. The lowest-level soldiers of the precious Bright Village Regiment were initially trembling with fear, but after a few days they finally adapted to the rhythm of the battlefield. Bu Zifei's troops were all elites and did not panic at all. They were like nimble bees, roaming around the strongholds, occasionally attacking the defensive barrier of the strongholds. The initial stage of the Fire Scythe Ghost Claw was to burn the energy in the air, and Tang Tian had fumbled and combusted the energy in his body to form the Demon King Blazing Firefly. And when Tang Tian became a zero-energy body, the Demon King Blazing Firefly once again returned to burning the energy in the air. Crane praised, "What a beautiful enduring strike." The opponent was as crafty as a fox. Facing their continuous probing, he maintained his composure and continued to numb them, and only then did he unleash his trump card. It was a solid blow, causing Bu Zifei's heart to bleed. A full 200 casualties. It was the 7th Army's most disastrous loss. Our offense is not strong enough. The opponent's defense does not have any blind spots. The person who constructed this stronghold is definitely an expert. After we break through it, we must definitely study it properly. The opponent's bewilderment was quietly wasting time, which was what Tang Tian wanted. Sieging frigates were warships that were specially used to attack cities. They had different sizes and carried warship weapons, and could be controlled by one or a few small combat teams, possessing outstanding agility and good defense. They were the nemesis of all strongholds. And today Tang Tian had unleashed the ignition to a new height. Bu Zifei calmed down. Just at that moment, a concentrated whistling sound came out from the sky. He quivered and immediately raised his head, his face changing. This group of amateurs, their pathetic synchronization rate. Seeing the cheering soldiers, Bing did not pour cold water on them. The short victory was of great help to the amateurs. But he knew in his heart the battle had just begun. The following battles were destined to be extremely cruel, and there would never be another chance like today. The sharp light thorns shot into the bodies of the soldiers of the 7th Army, and in the sky blood blossomed. But how could Tang Tian's effort on the Spirit King Blazing Fireflies be wasted? Wait a minute, Gong Chen suddenly quivered. His gaze shifted away from Tang Tian. He looked around and his face changed. Bang! The adjutant's face frowned. The situation in front of him was much more troublesome than he had thought. One after another, light balls the size of baskets shot out from the stronghold at an astonishing frequency, drawing out blazing arcs, bringing forth heart-palpitating whistling sounds. They smashed into the attacking troops like shooting stars. The protective barrier of the small group trembled intensely, but it only lasted for a second before it completely crumbled. The 7th Army was dead silent. Everyone was stunned by the scene. two figures flashed in the rain of light, using an astonishing frequency to chase after each other, clashing. It was so tense that it caused everyone to be unable to breathe. Gong Chen calmed down. Meng Nan's fighting techniques were truly outstanding. To be able to unleash such exquisite martial techniques at the quasi-silver rank, it was unheard of. But to think that they could rely on such techniques to break through the unsurmountable gulf of energy transformation was a fool's dream. That was Tang Tian's true enlightenment. A total of 300 men had joined the battle, but until now they were still unable to move the stronghold. Gong Chen was filled with confidence. The quasi-silver rank and silver rank only had a difference of one word, but the difference in strength was like heaven and earth. It was their fifth probing attack. The previous 4 probing attacks made their stronghold's attacks not too agile, so they increased the power of their attacks. Jing Hao's face was full of praise. The demeanor of a famous general, the standard of control aura has reached great heights. A few of the luckier small groups were coincidentally further away from the strongholds and escaped, but all of them were stunned by the scene in front of them. Half a day off. Luckily the enemy's general was extremely cautious, and Bing rejoiced in his heart. At the start of the battle, the precious Bright Village Regiment's performance was terrible. Their synchronization rate was only a pitiful 30%, half of their usual training. But after the continuous battles, the amateurs finally started to adapt to the battlefield, and their synchronization rate started to rise steadily. This guy's strength was much stronger than what they had reported. Everyone could no longer see Tang Tian and Gong Chen's figures clearly. The fireflies in the sky were no longer beautiful, but filled with a suffocating pressure. Inside the lingering smoke, Bing sneered in his heart. Amateurs, the feast is yet to come. Gong Chen stared straight at Meng Nan. His handsome and calm face revealed an indescribable sinister killing intent. Chapter 620. The shockwave from the explosion instantly sent Gong Chen flying. And he is truly ruthless. Bai Yu was speechless. He dares to be so arrogant in someone else's territory. I thought that he would only teach Gong Chen a lesson, but I never expected that he would directly kill Gong Chen. Is he not afraid of offending Bai Sha? Bai Yu snorted. Who cares which army he bought? I do not believe that he can buy an army stronger than dual-soaring swallow Xieyuan, demon. Oh my god, that's a demon. At that moment, on the Suji Worldwide Commerce's transport ship, a group of people who looked like refugees squeezed together in the lower deck, making a ruckus. From today onwards, the technique would be called Firefly Ocean. Bai Xiaoming understood what second uncle Bai meant. Xieyuan's swift army was already the peak of a bronze army, and it would be extremely difficult to advance further. A silver army was not something that any small continent could raise. Even for the wealthy continents, silver armies were the most important armies, and at times the most important thing was not ability but loyalty. Top 100? Bai Yu shook his head. His abilities are not limited to that. But he is unlucky. He comes from a small family, and although he is talented, he can only reach this stage. But this is a good opportunity, and he is not willing to continue wasting away. Bai Xiao was startled but immediately reacted. Second uncle, the army that you bought for him, could it be Xieyuan's army? The fiery clouds formed by the fireflies did not seem to have any resistance against the sword aura. Gong Chen knew that whether or not he could escape alive depended on this technique. He endured the pain from his injuries and rushed towards the direction of the sword aura. The fiery clouds returned to silence. With a sharp shout, Gong Chen, who had a distorted expression, poured all of the remaining energy in his body into energy transformation. Boss, what does our boss look like? The man who spoke was bald and shiny. He had a fierce-looking face. His body was robust like a small mountain. A gigantic light sword that was over 30 m long formed above Gong Chen's head. He is obviously not even a silver. How can he form such a large-scale attack? The Bai family uncle and nephew looked at each other. The two of them had bitter smiles on their faces. The fear in his heart continued to grow. Suddenly the fireflies in the surroundings trembled. Gong Chen, who was at the center of the Jinyuan, his expression turned sluggish, and in the next moment his body seemed to have been cut with countless small wounds and hundreds of streams of blood spurted out. The white insects that were flying crazily around him shattered like glass with a crisp sound. The sword ray started to slow down and Gong Chen started to feel uneasy. What was going on? Why haven't they charged out yet? Don't block the light. Light is the source of art, understand? The entire White Sand City's citizens were alarmed. All of them walked out of their houses and flew into the sky. When they saw the frightening fire cloud that was squirming and expanding, the blood on their faces immediately faded away. Gongchen raised his sword hilt up high. That's him. Baiyu nodded his head. Xiaoxia's ability is not bad, but a pity he did not meet a good boss. I owed him a favor back then, and this is the perfect time to make up for it. Ahem, who's smoking? Do you want to choke me to death? Pa pa pa. Absolutely impossible. Stab that snoring pig to death. So noisy. Bai Xiao laughed bitterly. I have never heard of such a terrifying martial technique before. I still haven't figured out where this guy came from. The dazzling sword aura pierced into the fire cloud. He did not know that the firefly sea had already expanded to the size of the continent lord's garden. Everyone in the venue stared blankly at the fireflies dancing above their heads. The dense black cloud was like a fiery cloud hanging from the top. That kind of oppressive feeling like empty tie was pressing down on them, causing the entire venue to be silent. I will bring Fire Scythe Ghost Claw to greater heights. The light aura of Fire Scythe Ghost Claw will definitely burn the eyes of the entire world. Tang Tian could not be bothered with her. He was still immersed in his enlightenment. Boss, your face is already covered, where else? The triangular-eyed short man asked in surprise. Hey Ghost Claw, did you see that? Baiyu's last sentence revealed his crafty nature. Gong Chen stared blankly at the endless fireflies in his field of vision, his expression stupefied. That's true. Baiyu shrugged his shoulders. Anyway, we don't need to worry. Sigh, seems like this brat has a bright future ahead of him. Little Xia is good. If little Xia follows him, he will not have a hard time in the future. Gong Chen, who was in the fire cloud, was trembling. He could no longer see Meng Man's figure. All around him were the densely packed fireflies. Hey Ghost Claw, I told you before. Who knows? Bai Xiao did not care. Bai Xiao was the one who found trouble with him. How could he not let Brother Meng retaliate? We still underestimated him. Baiyu laughed bitterly. The previous battle had shocked him. His face still had traces of disbelief. What martial technique was that? I have never heard of it before. It is truly too terrifying. This martial technique is more than enough to deal with an army. I am now very curious what family is able to groom such a freak. The sword hilt in her hand started to grow frantically, and in the next moment, it shattered into white worms. The red-haired lady said weakly, I am a little hungry. The originally fine white worms were now the size of soybeans. Their entire bodies were like jade, sparkling and translucent white. They were like a white mist, dancing around Gong Chen, and wherever they passed the fireflies would shatter into pieces. The pain of his body being sliced caused Gong Chen to wake up. He did not want to waste time with them. He stopped and flew towards the White Sands Hotel. Everyone looked at each other, but no one dared to stop him. And Xian's face changed. He soared into the air and caught Gong Chen. Looking down, Gong Chen was no longer breathing. He was dead. And Xian's face turned green. He looked at Tang Tian and clenched his teeth. Good. Very good. You are truly vicious and merciless. Gong Chen's head fell down. The light sword suddenly slashed down. Little three, give me a few more cucumbers. He had rushed out to a distance of 5 li, but he was still surrounded by fireflies. How is that possible? Everyone was in a mess. None of them were in a proper state. Some were snoring and sleeping soundly, some were gambling, some were meditating, some were drawing, some were sharpening their blades. Bang! Blazing white energy surged out from the wounds all over his body. The space around him was distorted by the surging energy, becoming extremely unstable. Who the fuck took off their shoes? Although his physical body was weak and could not be compared to the savage continent, but he was still a silver saint, and compared to the ordinary saints of the sacred saint galaxy, his willpower was much more tenacious. At the critical moment of life and death, all of his potential was stimulated, and the ferocity in his body overcame his fear. Everyone's face was filled with shock. Even if they were watching from afar, they could feel the monstrous fire clouds that contained an astonishing amount of energy. Inside the vast sea of fireflies, Tang Tian's heart was calm. He had already rushed forward for a distance of 7 li, but he was still not out of the fireflies' encirclement. How big is the range of the fireflies? Mr. Meng, please be lenient. The pale-faced continent lord shouted. Twin flying swallows, Xie and Bai Xiao could not help but say, Brother Meng has struck it big this time. In the entire southern region he can be ranked in the top 100 generals. Could it be an illusion? The powerful saints hurriedly stood up and set up a barrier to block the waves of heat. The fire clouds started to dissipate like snow melting. The speed was extremely fast. His white worms were frantically swimming around him, sweeping away the fireflies. But there were more and more fireflies, and the range of movement of the white worms was continuously shrinking. He felt that he was going crazy. He felt like a wild beast trapped in a cage, and the cage was becoming smaller and smaller. The continent lord knew that Gongchen was dead. His face was as black as the bottom of a wok. He flicked his sleeves and left. Everyone present no longer had the mood to continue, and all bid their farewells and left. Inside the fire clouds, there were explosive sounds and blazing lights. Everyone guessed that it was definitely Gongchen who was struggling. The sword aura destroyed everything, causing Gongchen's heart to be at ease. In that moment he had already rushed to a distance of 1 li. The number of white worms on Gongchen's body increased, and the range of the white worms had already expanded to a distance of 15 m. The blazing white energy flames on Gongchen's body gradually dimmed. He moved his lips and revealed a maniacal smile. What martial technique is that? The red-haired lady's face was plastered with cucumber slices. Everyone's heart sank. They looked at each other. All of them could see the fear and unease in each other's eyes. Don't look down on me. I am so strong, so powerful that it is a complete mess. Leave your fire scythe ghost claw to me. It will definitely not go wrong. 2 li, 3 li. But at that moment no one thought that Gongchen could win. Bai Xiao was suddenly curious. Which army did Su Jin buy? As though they could sense Tang Tian's thoughts, the fireflies in the sky all trembled at the same time, releasing buzzing sounds. In a short minute and a half, the mountain-like fire clouds disappeared without a trace, and 2 figures appeared in the sky. Gongchen's entire body was covered in blood, while Meng Nan, who was not far from him, was not injured at all. Oh my god, what was that? Go and die. This made him calm down. The sword aura became slower and slower, and finally it stopped. Unable to withstand the attacks of the fireflies, it suddenly exploded. Hey Ghost Claw, I told you before. Damn it. Is he going to destroy the city? Suddenly Tang Tian thought about the stooped and short figure, thought about the skinny and withered claw, thought about the proud and unresigned gaze, thought about the silent arrogance that never admitted defeat. The sword aura's momentum slowed down and the fireflies surged over. They struck onto the sword aura like rain, the dense sparks enveloping the entire sword aura flickering incessantly. Sigh, the swarm of fireflies suddenly transformed into countless of streams that surged towards the sword hilt. If he doesn't pay, then kill him. A lazy voice sounded out, causing the few of them to nod their heads. Wherever the sound wave swept past, the glass on the houses would shatter. All of the small wooden houses floating in the sky would tremble and fall. Hey Ghost Claw, are you doing well in heaven? That's right, can he even afford it? A short man with triangular eyes used a dagger to trim his fingernails and snorted. Along the way the fireflies continued to clash with the sword auras, causing sparks to fly and explosions to sound out. The scene was extremely explosive. Gongchen did not dare to be distracted. He buried himself under the sword auras and ran forward with all his might. Bai Xiao thought about it. Because of his relationship with his second uncle, Bai Xiao had a deep understanding of the Swift army, and knew that it was definitely an army that was underestimated. Millions of vibrating sounds converged into an astonishing sound wave that suddenly exploded out. The formless sound wave swept across the entire White Sands city at an astonishing speed. Chapter 621. He stayed in the Ling family courtyard all day, immersing himself in his latest enlightenment. In the market, all the denouncements against Tang Tian had also disappeared. No one dared to provoke such a demon. That's right, in the eyes of the White Sands nobles, Meng Nan was portrayed as a ruthless and tyrannical demon, a demon who would kill if there was a disagreement. In front of the Continent Lord, he disregarded the Continent Lord's request and cruelly killed Gongchen, to the point that even the Continent Lord dared not say anything. If he was not a demon, then what was he? Xiao Ran did not say a word. She carried her blade and walked to the door. Suddenly she noticed that there were words on the door. She extended her hand and wiped off the dust on the door, revealing the shiny metallic luster. At the same time, there was a line of words. After walking for over 200 kilometers, Jia Shangguan said, "Let's rest for a while." In the barren wilderness, not a single blade of grass grew, with no end in sight. They had walked for a few months, but the night had never retreated. Luckily for them, the stars in the sky were bright, and the faint radiance from the stars caused the wilderness to not be pitch black. With the Ling family courtyard as the center, there was not a single person in a radius of 3 kilometers. Xiao Man wielded her machete and carefully protected Qian Hui by her side. Her face was filled with caution as she snorted. "Be more alert, this place is extremely sinister." Xiao Ran snorted. She stabbed her blade into the ground with a look of disdain. Exen struggled to crawl up from the ground and muttered, "This T-Rex, why does he have such a good body?" Xiao Ran snorted. She arrogantly walked past Exen, but in her heart she could not help but feel pleased. "So it turns out that I have a good body." Hearing what the young miss said, Xiao Ran also felt that it was more like a building and did not understand. Who built a building here? Everyone became more cautious. No one knew what kind of unpredictable dangers were lurking in this place. Xian and Xiao Ran, one on the left and one on the right, protected Xianxia. Inside the building there was a thick layer of dust, showing that no living beings had visited the place for a very long time. Xiao Ran stretched her back, causing Xian to stare blankly. Xian's hands subconsciously raised up, and his fingers moved subconsciously. Xiao Ran's gaze turned to Xian, who waved his hand. "Sounds like a big figure." If we were to say that energy transformation was the key to the Firefly Sea's transformation, then the Null Flames were born to be close-quarters combat experts. Although the Zero Energy body was a rather powerful body, but compared to the other blood meridians in Heaven's Road, its ability to strengthen the body was not considered outstanding. This also made it difficult for Tang Tian to unleash his full power in melee combat, which he had originally intended to do. But the Null Flames that were formed after the awakening of the Zero Energy body talent caused Tang Tian's close combat power to increase exponentially. "Sir, there's a castle up ahead." Tang Tian's battle had shaken White Sands City. Indeed, it did not look like a castle. There were no towering arrow towers or any offensive buildings. Instead, it was a tall and straight building with layers upon layers. However, it could be seen that this should be a relic. It had been a long time since anyone had come here, and the windows and walls were all in ruins. Bang! A few spirit generals raised their bright light crystal rods and walked into the building. The light released by the light crystal rod immediately illuminated the entire building. Xiao Man's mind was roused. She immediately picked up her machete and leapt onto her horse. After searching for so many days, she did not find anything. She was originally an anxious person, and was extremely dispirited. She was not afraid of enemies or battles, but was afraid of not finding anything. "It looks like a building." The one who spoke was Xianxia. Her exquisite and flawless face raised up slightly, and looked at the building at the peak of the mountain. "It is a tall building." Tang Tian did not think much about it. He only had the Null Flames on his fists in close combat. The Firefly Sea that had not completed energy transformation had already allowed his strength to increase by leaps and bounds. More importantly, the path ahead for him had also become incomparably clear. A grinding sound that caused people's teeth to ache came out. The dust on the door rustled and fell, revealing the bright and clean metal material. Even after so many years, the door did not have any traces of rust. Xiao Man looked at him. "When this little hoodlum is serious, he has some aura." She asked, "What does it look like?" "Paying respect to Heiner Van Sant." "Yes." Xianxia's tone was calm. "Don't worry, the planet is not big, we will find it very quickly." All of the scouts and spies around the Ling family courtyard had disappeared without a trace in a single night. Not only that, even the commoners around the Ling family courtyard were frightened to the point of moving away. "What kind of broken place is this?" Xian mumbled. The army moved out. Xianxia suddenly stood up. "Everyone get ready." Just that, the current Null Flames had only grown to the size of Tang Tian's hands, and was still far from covering his entire body. Tang Tian's path of being a close-quarters combat expert was still a long way off. Even eldest young noble and the rest who initially hoped to form an alliance with Tang Tian did not dare to act blindly without thinking. They did not even know if it was a good or bad thing for them. The two of them had agreed to communicate every month, but every time Tang Tian opened the Bronze Star door, there would be no response, causing him to be extremely worried. The entire army immediately increased their speed and approached the castle on the mountain peak. When they got closer, they realized that the shape of the castle was somewhat strange. "Kid change." Xianxia took a deep breath. She had a strong premonition that the perfectly preserved ruins definitely hid an astonishing secret. Gong Chen's death in the midst of the shocking battle did not attract much attention. Everyone was discussing about Meng Nan's mysterious background and master, discussing about the fire cloud that was 100 mu in circumference. If it truly landed on the ground, what kind of scene would it be? What kind of mystical martial technique was the fire cloud that grew crazily by itself? It was the only trace of a human that they had found in the past few days. Xiao Ran did not dare to be careless. She commanded a few spirit generals to search the surroundings, and only after confirming that it was safe did she stop. Suddenly, the urgent sound of horse hooves caused Xiao Ran to raise her head. The scouts in the distance were rushing over. They had entered the deathly still land from a star door, and when they realized that something was amiss after a few days and turned back, the star door had disappeared. "We will know once we go up." Jia Shengguan retracted her gaze and said indifferently. Xiao Ran muttered. She turned her head and asked, "Miss, who is Heiner Van Sant?" Everything seemed to be progressing in a good direction, but the only thing that worried him was Chia. On the towering mountain peak, a lonely castle stood there. The desolate and silent mountain peak. The castle was pitch black, without any light. If there was no starlight, with everyone's outstanding eyesight, it would be extremely difficult to discover the castle. Rogue. Walking to the front of the building, the first thing that came into view was a dusty door. But all of this had nothing to do with Tang Tian. Everyone's attention was roused. The metal door was forcefully pushed open by Xiao Ran, and the smell of dust rushed out. It was obvious that no one had lived inside for a long time. "It doesn't look like a castle." Xin frowned, his expression solemn. Jia Shengguan tried opening the bronze star door, but there was no reaction. She was disappointed, but her expression did not change. "Yes." Xiao Ran and Xian accepted the order and set up camp. A few scouts scattered in all directions, disappearing into the horizon. Their mission was to scout the surroundings to see if there were any suspicious places. Xiao Ran raised her large blade and like a fly swatter she fiercely swatted Xian's face. Xian was like a rubber ball and was directly sent flying. When everyone talked about the battle last night, their faces would be filled with fear and respect. Although many people did not know the true details of the battle, but just based on the fiery clouds, it was enough for ordinary people to imagine. Heiner Van Sant? Jia Shengguan thought about it carefully and shook his head. "Never heard of him." "It still doesn't work?" Xiao Ran asked worriedly. They did not see any living beings. Firefly Ocean's might had far exceeded his expectations, causing Tang Tian to be surprised, and at the same time, it gave him a new enlightenment. And the other thing that gave him enlightenment was Gong Chen's final counterattack, the energy combusting. The demon was extremely fierce. Lady Ro did not dare make a sound. Master Hiying did not dare make a sound, and in that moment, everyone in White Sand City actually felt a sense of danger. Kakaka. Xiao Ran nodded her head. Not long after they entered the planet, they realized something strange. The planet had a formless and mysterious power, cutting off the connection between the bronze star door, causing Jia Shengguan and Tang Tian to lose contact for a period of time. Very quickly they rushed to the top of the mountain. It was truly a modern-style building, 13 stories tall, without any decorations. Such a building could be seen anywhere in any academy. At that time this godlike young lad would be extremely strong. Xian's roguish look made Xiao Ran snort coldly. She casually stabbed her blade into the ground beside her feet. The metal door did not have any decorations. Xiao Ran pressed both of her hands on the door. Lowering her waist into a horse stance, she bellowed and released all of her strength. Everyone was disappointed but heaved a sigh of relief. Tang Tian's firefly already had a trace of energy transmutation, but it was still a distance away from the true energy transmutation. Gong Chen's final unrestrained combustion provided him with a considerable amount of information. If he was able to figure it out and completely gain enlightenment on energy transmutation, then his strength would undoubtedly reach another height. Even the people who wanted to teach Meng Nan a lesson were immediately pulled back by their friends and family, and bitterly persuaded them to not provoke such a demon. They did not want to bring calamity to White Sands. After advancing for about 20 kilometers, Jia Shengguan finally saw the castle that the scouts spoke of. Xin moved closer to Xiao Ran, his gaze sneaking a glance at Xiao Ran's voluptuous chest, and his face immediately became slightly red. Null flames were the best weapons for close-quarters combat experts. Security Bureau Tian Qiguang was scared out of his wits. All of his sneaky actions stopped. The security of White Sands City once again became orderly. Luckily for them, the planet was not big and they were all searching for the star door that led out as well as the source of the mysterious power. But until now they did not realize that the planet was like an ordinary planet, desolate, dead, without any signs of life. Exen scratched his chin and muttered, as expected of a T-Rex. This door seems to be made of some material, who knows, it might be something good. Oh, when we leave we must take it away, we cannot waste it. Just thinking about the Firefly Sea that had completed energy transmutation made Tang Tian extremely excited. Chapter 622. Knowing that the future would be challenging, Xie Yuan felt that time was limited, and was not willing to waste it. He stood up and said, "Bring me to meet the new boss." The Swift Army was personally created by Xie Yuan, and they were all Xie Yuan's best friends, and it would be troublesome to clean them up, so bringing them all would be the best choice. By family. Bai Yu explained, his family is in the mining business and they have discovered a brand new metal called black gold, which is suitable to be used to make warship weapons. It is stronger than corundum but slightly weaker than energy jade, and the key point is that it is produced in a shocking amount. So they are a thick thigh and will definitely not be lacking in money. What they are worried about is whether or not they can protect their wealth, so they have the thought of buying an army. When Bai Yu saw Xie Yuan, a trace of warmth surfaced in his eyes, and his face revealed a smile. "Have you settled everything?" Xie Yuan and Bai Yu looked at each other. You would definitely not feel heartache for the army. Good. Xie Yuan knew that the other party wanted to see the quality of the Swift Army, and naturally agreed to it. He was extremely confident in his army. Bai Yu muttered, "I am not worried about the treatment of you and the Swift Army. I have interacted with Xiaomeng before and he is not a petty person, but instead he is extremely generous. He has a group of underworld continents demonic mounts, but they are not many. Suji Worldwide Commerce is also a partner and will not lack equipment. There will not be a problem with money and equipment. What I am worried about is Xiaomeng's family. From what I can see, Xiaomeng is not from any big family and the pressure on you will be huge." Bai Yu noticed that Tang Tian had arrived and laughed, "Your new boss is here." But his words were not a joke. To a general, to have no battles, no enemies, and only be able to drink tea in a secluded corner was a cruel thing. Tang Chou completely ignored the shock in their eyes. His tone was cold, unkind, and arrogant. "I am Tang Chou and am the third in command under Master. I will be the one to test your army. Everything is settled." Xie Yuan sat beside Bai Yu and without being courteous he drank the tea in one gulp and placed it down, and looked at Bai Yu with a passionate gaze. "All right, tell me." The two of them were once classmates and had a deep relationship, but their fates were completely different. Bai Yu was already one of the world's famed generals, while Xie Yuan was still in a remote corner, leading a small army in charge of the local security. For the sake of becoming a famous general that could surpass Master Bing, Tang Chou formulated the crazy Ursa Major Constellation Army's reorganization plan. Tang Tian turned and spoke to Bai Yu. "Uncle Bai, I do not know much about armies." Almost instantly the two of them determined that this spirit puppet was a general. As for the third in command, even if Tang Chou firmly believed that his future achievements would not be below Master Bing, he would definitely not dare to fight with the lady boss for power. Humph, Master Bing would not dare either. Bai Yu looked at Tang Tian in a daze. He himself was a freak. Could it be that everyone around him were freaks? He turned his body sideways, revealing Tang Chou's cold face. If Bai Xiao knew that her own second uncle had such an unbearable past, she would definitely be dumbstruck. Seeing all of the figures perspiring profusely, Xie Yuan's heart was filled with emotions. The army was slowly built up by him, and he had spent all of his blood and sweat. He had racked his brains and thought of all sorts of ways to find some useful resources for the army, and that was how it was today. He had never thought that it would actually be a child. After so many years he had never moved. If not for the old continent lord's death and the new continent lord taking over, he would not have left so decisively. It was not that Bai Yu did not think of helping Xie Yuan, but the Bai family was filled with talents, and even he could not take out the position of a core army commander. And Bai Yu knew that although Xie Yuan had a warm temper, he was equally proud, and to be his assistant he did not even dare to open his mouth. Calling him a child might be an exaggeration, but Tang Tian's age was truly too young. Brother Yuan is a genius. Bai Yu could not help but praise. Such an iron army little Meng has earned. As long as we equip ourselves with equipment and replenish our medicine, in no time, we will become another silver-grade army. When Bai Yu and Xie Yuan saw Tang Chou, they were both startled. Spirit puppet. And it was not an ordinary spirit puppet. The two of them looked at each other, they could see the shock in each other's eyes. What made them shocked was not the sudden appearance of the spirit puppet, but the familiar smell that the spirit puppet was emitting. He understood the meaning behind Bai Yu's words. Although his boss was rich, he did not have any power. The value of black gold to any commander was clear of the huge amount of wealth it held. At that time, who knew how many people would be jealous of such wealth, and the attacks they would receive in the open or in the dark? The swift army would be in a dire situation. Xie Yuan secretly nodded his head, although he was young, but he did not seem to be an arrogant and rude person. The entire Ursa Major Constellation's army was under his command, and was tormented by his crazy plans to the point that they wished they were dead, and all of his passion was placed on it. To be suddenly grabbed by Tang Tian to evaluate an army that he had never heard of before, and it was even bought. I understand what you mean. Xie Yuan's expression relaxed, he stretched his back. You guys are too busy and want to slack off. I have been idle for too long and feel like I'm getting rusty and can't wait to be busy. Does famous General Tang Chou look so free? Although it was just a temporary barracks, but Xie Yuan's meticulous personality was still displayed. Everywhere there were sentries, the security was strict inside the barracks, although the soldiers did not wear armor, nor did they have any weapons, but it was still extremely stern. Bai Yu noticed the disappointment in Xie Yuan's eyes, and was overjoyed. Every single person who looked down on Meng Nan because of his age would regret it till their intestines turned green. Bai Yu never thought that his old friend would actually make such a mistake. He had completely forgotten the expression he had when he first met Tang Tian. It was not much better than Xie Yuan. Xie Yuan's heart trembled. He followed Bai Yu's gaze. He was extremely curious about his new boss. But when he saw Tang Tian's appearance, he was extremely disappointed. All right, I will arrange for someone to send the letter. Bai Yu stood up. We do not need to meet him, he will directly go to the barracks. Hello, I am Meng Nan. Tang Tian returned the greeting. Bai Yu happily headed over. He was also extremely curious about the army that his classmate had brought out. Although his days were leisurely, but he had never slacked on his training, and trained according to the standards of a silver-grade army. Although there were many aspects that could not be trained due to the lack of resources, medicine, etc., but many of the aspects still far exceeded the standards of a bronze-grade army. Let's go take a look at my army. Xie Yuan laughed. Xie Yuan nodded his head. Of course he knew the value of black gold, and from that he could tell that the other party was truly rich and powerful. That's right. Bai Yu's mind was roused. He is my partner. Xie Yuan was handsome, dressed in simple clothes. He had a scholarly demeanor, and with one look, one could tell that he was a gentle person. Tang Chou was furious, but he was unable to disobey Tang Tian's orders, so he came, and his mood was definitely terrible. Or the Bai family? Xie Yuan asked. Who knew that Tang Tian's tone would change? That's why I specially invited someone who knows. The two of them felt that it was inconceivable. In the Sacred Saint Galaxy, spirit dyads were extremely rare, and for a spirit dyad general, it was even more unheard of. He hurriedly poured some water for Xie Yuan to brew tea. Come, try this tea, it's this year's new tea. Xie Yuan's military achievements were actually not bad. If not, he would not have such a reputation in the southern region. But Xie Yuan's military achievements were in a very awkward position, just like his own situation. His continent lord treated him well, but it was a pity that his own strength was limited, and those who recruited him either had money but were not willing to give him the treatment of a core army, or were willing to promise, but their own strength was limited. Xiaomeng. Bai Yu laughed. Come, let me introduce you. This is Xie Yuan, the commander of the Swift Army. How is it? Are you here for a review? Your Uncle Bai can guarantee that the Swift Army is definitely an elite army. Even Uncle Bai's heart is palpitating with eagerness. I believe that. Xie Yuan replied without hesitation. To be able to directly buy an army, he definitely has money. In the temporarily cleared training grounds, there was a hubbub of voices. All sorts of training was in full swing. Even at such a time, the army's training did not relax at all. The new continent lord originally hoped to promote his own trusted aide, but Xie Yuan was extremely famous, and if he made too big of a move, it would easily cause unrest. When Xie Yuan took the initiative to resign, the new continent lord heaved a sigh of relief. Not only did he not stop him, he even gave him some travel expenses. Bai Yu was slightly embarrassed and coughed lightly. I did not lie to you, the other party is truly a tyrant. Xie Yuan bowed politely, neither servile nor overbearing. Hello, I am Xie Yuan. Bai Yu was filled with admiration towards his classmate in the academy. Xie Yuan's results were even more outstanding than his, and in the past 90% of Bai Yu's homework was copied from Xie Yuan. If not for Bai Yu knowing that his results were too bad in his last year, his father would definitely break his legs, and he had to work hard for a year before barely managing to graduate. The old continent lord trusted him a lot, and as long as his wealth allowed it, Xie Yuan's suggestions would always be accepted. He was indebted to the old continent lord for recognizing him, and that was one of the reasons why he stayed there. Then I can rest easy. Bai Yu laughed out loud and patted Xie Yuan's shoulder. At that time, that group of people will know how powerful you are. In truth, every time Bai Yu saw Xie Yuan, he would feel a sense of guilt in his heart. Could it be that I copied too much homework in the past? Xie Yuan never thought that Tang Tian would actually admit that he did not know. Oh, that's not bad, at least it's better than pretending to know and giving random commands. That kind of person is a complete disaster to the army, but it seems that my mission will be even harder. Chapter 623. Bai Yu kept quiet. Damn pervert. To an experienced general with solid theories, a brand new fighting method, if given enough time, he would definitely have his own understanding, and that was the strength of a famed general. Xie Yuan's face was equally ugly. The energy undulation was at the 7th grade. That was the standard for a large-scale explosion. The energy undulation would be extremely chaotic, and in such an environment to complete energy synchronization was extremely difficult. The red-haired young lady snorted, useless. Xie Yuan heaved a sigh of relief. He who came from a proper academy naturally knew that synchronization was the life of an army, and in their daily training, synchronization training was always the most important. Tang Chou opened up the notebook in his hand expressionlessly and started to record. Tang Chou's words were definitely not wrong on paper. He himself had patted his chest and promised Meng Nan that he would buy a powerful army for him. The money spent, the equipment prepared, would reach the standard of a silver-grade army, and no matter how strict the selection criteria were, it was still acceptable. To an elite, the latter was more important than the former. Tang Chou's humiliation caused Xie Yuan's eyes to turn bloodshot. He had a warm temperament but was extremely arrogant in his heart, and was extremely confident in his own army. Inexplicably, Xie Yuan became anxious, as though he had returned to the academy and was undergoing a big test. Behind him, the swift army was silent. Bai Yu stared blankly at the unfamiliar figure on the screen. Xie Yuan bellowed. His meticulous hair was in a mess, his entire body was covered in mud. He waved his arms with all his might. The energy undulation caused his body to sway, floating up and down. Only people who truly wanted to buy would be so picky, and Xie Yuan was worried that the other party's promises were not just words. But seeing the stance of the real deal, he believed in the other party's sincerity. And Tang Chou was not wrong. If they were not elites, how could they have the qualifications to enjoy such treatment? Even Xie Yuan was lying in the mud, perspiration flowing down his face, washing away the mud. Inside the mud, all of the swift army members were lying in a mess. No one was standing. They were gasping for breath. All of them were dirty and messy, perspiration mixed with mud, but no one cared about them. After struggling in the torrential energy undulation for 2 hours, their physical strength had long been squeezed out, with nothing left. Just that. Focus on synchronizing with the rhythm. Do not fight against the energy undulation. In the entire swift army, when had they ever seen their master fight so hard? Everyone's eyes were red and they did not care about anything else. Bai Yu could not help but look at Tang Tian. Xiao Meng's background was truly not as simple as he thought. The moment an expert made a move, one would know whether or not he was an expert. The standard that Tang Chou displayed was definitely not the standard of an ordinary general. Tang Chou did not care about Xie Yuan's emotions at all. He could not wait for the damned mercenary army to be swept out of the door. Master's future is obviously the Ursa Major army that Master Tang Chou leads. Tang Chou did not care about the person behind him. He was completely focused on the swift army. The terrible results didn't surprise him, but he didn't ask them to stop. He had arranged for such a harsh test, not only to see the strength of the swift army. He had another intention, and that was to test the army's resilience and ability to adjust themselves. Haven't you had enough of sitting on the cold bench? Haven't you wasted enough time in that damned corner? Silently giving up, silently failing, no one knows, no one cares, day after day your heart is like stagnant water, haven't you had enough? Triangle Eyes swallowed his saliva and said softly, "Boss, the test seems to be slightly perverted." Tang Chou opened up his notebook expressionlessly. 4 energy pillars were embedded 30 m deep into the ground. Surrounding the army, the energy pillars shot out 4 light pillars, and following that, in between the light pillars they formed a light screen. The sealed cube light screen enveloped the army. Xie Yuan did not even groan, he struggled to crawl up, he raised his hand and bellowed, continuing to command the soldiers. The swift army's usual solid standard of training started to display its might, and the synchronization rate continued to rise. The soldiers started to get used to the intense energy undulation, and Xie Yuan gradually found the crux. His throat was already hoarse from shouting so loudly. He closed the notebook. Could it be? Bai Yu opened his mouth, but just as he was about to speak he heard Tang Chou's cold and emotionless voice. "According to the report, if I am not wrong, we bought an elite army, right?" Xie Yuan started to command the army to synchronize with the energy. The soldiers of the Swift Army had never synchronized in such a berserk environment before. It was as though they were in a raging wave and many of them had difficulty stabilizing their bodies. Tang Chou was expressionless, his eyes did not have any emotions. Bai Yu's heart was indescribably shocked, he had never seen such a Xie Yuan before. In his heart, Xie Yuan was forever refined and gentle. A synchronization rate of 30% was truly a tragic sight. It meant that the Swift Army's theoretical fighting strength was only able to unleash 30% of its might. You must know that was the theoretical limit, and in actual battles, the actual fighting strength that they could unleash would be far lower than the theoretical limit. The Sacred Saint Galaxy Army's fighting methods and specialties was something that Bing had submitted a long time ago, with the goal of providing a reference for the Ursa Major Constellation's armies. Tang Chou, who viewed Master Bing as a target to surpass, would never let go of such a report. Not only did he carefully read through it, he even did a large amount of analysis and calculations, which was what he was most proficient in. The cold and emotionless voice caused Bai Yu to have the urge to punch the man in the face. Tang Chou was expressionless as he announced the start. His understanding of the Sacred Saint Galaxy Army had reached an extremely profound level. Xie Yuan's adjutant could not help but mock. "Are you purposely making things difficult for us? Energy undulation of the 7th grade, do you know what that means?" The light screen dimmed, the intense energy undulation disappeared, and the soil fell to the ground like raindrops. Xie Yuan stopped the adjutant who was about to argue and said calmly, "All right." It could only be said Tang Chou was truly too perverse. Everyone else nodded their heads. The Sacred Saint Galaxy Army had a long history, and all sorts of tests had long been completed, and Tang Chou had long prepared the equipment to simulate the 7th grade energy undulation. The scene was so tragic that all the spectators were silent. Bang! The chaotic air flow fiercely smashed Xie Yuan into the soil that had long been destroyed. Behind Su Jin was a group of people who looked like refugees, and Bai Yu immediately understood that they were the army that Suji Worldwide Commerce had helped to purchase. But their sloppy appearance made Bai Yu look down on them. Su Jin is usually a reliable person, why did he bring such a group of trash? Relax your body, believe in your comrades. Xie Yuan's heart was like a regiment of flames burning. No matter how unwilling or angry he was, it was Tang Tian's orders, and to Tang Chou, it was the highest order and he would definitely not disobey it. She also had a bad premonition in her heart. The test this time is to test the synchronization rate under harsh conditions. The testing environment, the energy undulation, is at the 7th grade. Tang Chou was extremely serious and had made ample preparations. Su Jin's face turned white, thinking about how his own army had to undergo the same test. His scalp went numb. The first test is synchronization rate. The energy inside the light screen started to fluctuate intensely. Even the air became extremely unstable, surging endlessly like a storm. Just like usual, 1, 2, 3, just like that. Su Jin eagerly greeted Tang Tian, while the red-haired young lady and the rest stared at the test. All of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Bai Yu's gaze landed on the red-haired young lady at the front. She had fiery red hair, a slender figure, holding onto a large sword. She looked valiant and formidable. Suddenly, A name entered Bai Yu's mind. His eyes suddenly lit up with a light aura and his face changed. Just at that moment a large group of people suddenly rushed in, and Bai Yu saw Su Jin, who was at the front. 2 hours later the synchronization rate was at 56%. Bai Yu could not help but look at Tang Chou, who was still expressionless, without any change in expression. Well done. Xie Yuan turned a deaf ear and continued to roar, commanding the soldiers. But Tang Chou's next words caused his face to change. The intense energy undulation, the chaotic airflow, caused the ground inside the light screen to be twisted to a thickness of a few meters. The inside of the light screen was filled with dirt and mud, falling, colliding, groaning. Bai Yu's face was ugly, Xie Yuan's performance was terrible, the synchronization rate was only 30%. But thinking about it, if it was him to suddenly encounter such a test, his result would not be any better. Seeing Xie Yuan and the rest struggling inside, Tang Chou did not feel any pity, but instead he closed the small book in his hands and walked a few steps forward and said coldly, 30% synchronization rate, a terrible result. This is what you call an elite? Do not insult the word elite. This is only the first test. The other 8 tests after this will be even harsher than this. If you feel that you can't do it, you can give up. There is nothing shameful about it. Know your own strength on the battlefield. It can also allow you to preserve your life. Tang Chou glanced at the data and then wrote it down on the small book. In contrast, beside the red-haired young lady were rows of pale faces. Expressionless as always, Tang Chou announced the test environment, causing the swift army to be in an uproar. The test is over. I am sorry, but please do not insult the word elite in the future. Tang Chou's voice was as cold as usual. Fortunately, you have passed and have the qualifications to enter the next round of tests. Emotions were emotions, work was work. Begin. 40%, what a terrible value. 30 minutes, you spent 30 minutes and only increased by 10%? Do you know what you can do in 30 minutes? It's enough for you to die 300 times. And all of you died 300 times and only managed to increase your synchronization rate by 10%. What a cheap sacrifice. The standard of 55% to pass is far beyond your reach. And please note the standard for elites is 70%. Are you guys starting to despair? The sturdy men beside the red-haired young lady all had pale faces. Oh my god, this is such a perverted test, and this is only the first test? There are still 8 more perverted tests. Oh my god, why is this perverted man so perverted? Chapter 6:24. Out of the 9 tests, not only did the Swift Army not reach the standard of elites, they only passed 4 of them, and it was the worst result in the history of the Swift Army. If they failed, Xie Yuan would not have any complaints. He was talented to begin with, and after a few days he gradually understood the deep meaning behind the perverse tests. The army that Xie Yuan had personally created had already been deeply imprinted with his mark. From a certain perspective, the temperament of the Swift Army was exactly the same as Xie Yuan, the creator. They were obedient, disciplined, did not have any problems and were obedient. But Xie Yuan's pride had also become a part of the army's temperament. But there is room for growth. With some polishing we can still make do with it. Foosh, the faces of everyone in the Pink Skull army changed. They held back their anger, their faces black, completely ignoring the spectators. Their thoughts were simple: if they could not pass the tests, then so be it, but they could not be afraid, they could not retreat, they could not let the pervert succeed. For the sake of achieving the best results, Aya and the rest did their best. Many of their trump cards that they did not usually take out were all taken out. Aya bellowed and took the lead to enter the field. How terrifying is that army? Who knew that it would be put to use today? Even Bai Yu and Xie Yuan nodded their heads from time to time. The two of them were knowledgeable people. For the Pink Skull to be able to pass down for 200 years, they definitely had a few tricks up their sleeves. In terms of a head-on battle, the Pink Skull was definitely not a match for the Swift Army, but in terms of urban warfare, pursuit and counter-pursuit, traps and ambushes, the Pink Skull was definitely stronger than the Swift Army. Su Jin said with a bitter face, "They are a mercenary army and are proficient in different things from the Swift Army. Now please demonstrate what you are proficient in." Tang Chou said. Tang Tian felt that it was reasonable. Tang Chou tests them. Looking at Tang Chou in front of him, Xie Yuan's heart was filled with respect. This respect did not come from the fact that Tang Chou had the authority to decide his own fate, but the strength that he had displayed. Bai Yu's eyes were sharp. The standard that Tang Chou had displayed shocked him. Tang Chou was definitely a famed general. Previously he thought that although Meng Nan was rich he was just an ordinary nouveau riche, and his family did not have any background. To be able to recruit Xie Yuan's grade of commander and army was a huge gain. However, both of them came from traditional academies, so they naturally disapproved of the mercenaries' methods. Pink Skull couldn't help but smile. Oh my god, this pervert was actually quite easy to talk to. That Xie guy must have offended him before. That pervert must have used such a perverted thing to torture them. He sneered in his heart. Do you think that such a pervert wouldn't take the test? Old Su, you're too naive. Tang Chao's evaluation of Xie Yuan was actually quite good. He was obedient, perceptive, tenacious, and had a strict attitude. His only weakness was his narrow vision. However, this was directly related to him living in a remote area for a long time and not experiencing high-intensity battles. If looks could kill, Su Jin's gaze would have pierced countless holes into Bai Yu's body. Tang Chao's words made the entire Pink Skull ecstatic. That was great. They finally didn't have to go through those tests that made their bodies ache just by looking at them. Seeing that Tang Tian was looking at him, Xie Yuan said cautiously, "If it's the Pink Skull, then it's indeed quite famous." What could he say? He had nothing to say. To a homeless person who was about to starve to death, a hot bun was the most delicious food in the world, but to those rich people who ate delicacies every day, what was it? It's a mercenary army. Su Jin immediately corrected him. If he let Tang Tian think that he found a group of pirates with his fiery temper, he would definitely not have a good ending. Su Jin was still hoping to follow Tang Tian to earn a lot of money. How could he dare to offend Tang Tian at such a time? Of course, he did not dare offend Tang Chou. After witnessing it for the past few days, he knew that the perverted lunatic was also an existence that could not be provoked. To Tang Chou, a mercenary army was extremely unfamiliar. That's right, Tang Chou truly found something that he was interested in. He had never come into contact with mercenary armies before. He was a product of the Southern Cross Army, and followed the strict system of the Southern Cross Army. Su Jin wanted to pat his chest to prove that he was not lying. "I definitely do not dare to lie to Master. If Master does not believe me, you can ask Master Xia and Brother Bai." Trash. They are a true mercenary army from the Bailu continent. The Bailu continent's mercenaries are extremely famous. The Pink Skull is a traditional mercenary army that was established 200 years ago. Until today, it is already the third generation. Aya is the current leader of the Pink Skull, and in the past few years, regardless of whether it is the Pink Skull's reputation or the number of completed missions, they are all outstanding. Bai Yu's scalp went numb. What kind of family is actually so extravagant and powerful? Good. In the past few days to the Swift Army, it was an unprecedented nightmare. The tests were done in the day and at night. All sorts of weird content caused the entire Swift Army to be battered and exhausted. They were scolded and scolded, all sorts of mockery and ridicule tormenting their mental state. But no one in the Swift Army backed out. But to be used to protect Master, they are still qualified. You will soon know what a true pervert is like. They hated Tang Chou to the core. Such a powerful famous general is actually only the third in command. That means that there are two other famous general-level existences in front of Tang Chou. Their hearts were burning with rage. Then let's test another army. Tang Tian said naturally. By the side, Su Jin's face turned white. He laughed awkwardly. About that, Xiaomeng, this army is different from the Swift Army. But old Su, I can guarantee that it is an elite army and definitely not a nameless one. They are the Pink Skull Army. Trash. Other than Xie Yu and Aya's face revealed a smile. They were the best at such a drill. As an army for hire, it was common for them to receive requests from their employers. They were extremely familiar with how to display the strength of their army and how to move their employers. Although he had expected it, but Xie Yuan still felt bitter in his heart. Bai Yu, who was by the side, opened his mouth. He wanted to say that even his own army could not complete the perverted tests. But when the words reached his mouth, he realized that he could not say it out. Tang Chao's gaze towards the Pink Skull was like a hungry wolf looking at a piping hot steamed bun, his eyes filled with a faint green light. Every test was meticulously designed by the other party. All of the Swift Army's shortcomings and weaknesses were completely exposed in the harsh tests, causing Xie Yuan to be completely convinced. Tang Chou did not have any bias and watched with great interest. A large-scale attack on the battlefield was extremely destructive, but for such a small-scale attack, if used properly, its might would definitely not be small. You guys are hired. Tang Tian was very straightforward. He had absolute trust in Tang Chou, and the tenacity that the swift army had displayed over the past few days made him satisfied. He smiled. You guys have worked hard for the past few days. You can draw up a list of your equipment. I will get Suji Worldwide Commerce to prepare them for you. Xie Yuan had already decided even if he was not hired he would use the tests in his daily training. He was in a daze, but Tang Chou's voice pulled him back as Tang Chou was reporting to Tang Tian in front of him. The large-scale drill quickly unfolded, the dazzling small-scale coordination, the extremely professional sneak attacks. The seemingly loose formation was overflowing with killing intent. All of the soldiers that looked like refugees, all of them seemed to have changed into completely different people and were extremely professional. If any army is able to complete the tests. A motley crew. Even Aya, who was the calmest, could not help but loosen her grip on her sword hilt. Oh, this is a completely new research direction and can greatly supplement the current system. And even the test specimens are ready. This time Baiyu did not cheat Su Jin but instead agreed. Old Su's words are not wrong. The methods of the mercenary army are truly different from the standard armies. They are more proficient in small-scale infiltration, protecting important personnel and clearing out targets. The entire drill was extremely imposing. Tang Chou's words caused Xie Yuan's dim eyes to suddenly light up, but he immediately laughed bitterly in his heart. Since when did I fall to the point of being used? But he could not doubt it, could not reject it, and his heart was filled with joy. Sounds like pirates. Tang Chou said coldly. But now he finally understood. The depth of Meng Nan's family was far beyond his imagination. Xie Yuan heaved a sigh of relief. Yes. Aya saw Tang Chou nodding his head from time to time, revealing a satisfied expression, and was secretly happy. The contents of their drill were all meticulously arranged and looked extremely shocking. Not convinced. Everyone is not convinced. Since when did we lose to others in training? Since it is a mercenary army, there is no need for such tests. The results of the tests are terrible. Tang Chou's tone was as cold as usual. This army is definitely not elite. I feel that there is a large discrepancy with what the report said. From the looks of it, the results are good. Tang Chou was expressionless, but Xie Yuan's expression was seen by him. All the tests were done intentionally by him. Since they were mercenaries that were bought, he decided to help the master destroy their arrogance. He chose the most honorable method. He wanted to make them speechless and completely convinced. Mercenary army? Tang Chou was expressionless, but his eyes lit up. People who were familiar with him knew that Master Tang Chou had definitely found something interesting. Day and night crawling and fighting. Baiyu was unperturbed. What kind of joke is this? Xie Yuan that I brought was tortured to death, but the pink skull did not even touch the mud. That is not fair. Scattered soldiers. I have heard of the name Pink Skull before. Baiyu scratched his chin, but his tone changed. But what you hear is false. Seeing is believing. We need to see the quality. Chapter 625. Both parties were like two martial artists covered in blood. You slashed me, I stabbed you. There was no retreat, no dodging, only blood splattered everywhere. Becoming Tang Chou's test subject was definitely not something to be happy about. What made her want to vomit blood was that the other party was using them as test subjects. Bu Zifei did not hesitate at all. He gave the order. Behind him the entire army soared into the sky. They did not leave any reserves behind. These two armies are crippled. Bu Zifei sighed. This place, there is a parameter that needs to be tested again. Every group will do it 20 times. But the 12th and 15th Army's strength could not compare to the 7th Army, and their casualties immediately increased. Wave after wave of attacks, all sorts of light auras continuously landed on the defensive barrier, the dazzling light auras and the fireballs blossoming in the sky intertwined. Inside the Sword Forest stronghold, the precious Bright Village Regiment was swaying left and right. They had overexerted themselves, causing them to fall unconscious. Over 600 men, the 12th and 15th Army. The Shang continent. Aya held onto her sword hilt tightly. She wanted to chop the lunatic into pieces. By her side, the other people were all angry, but did not dare say anything. They were already tortured to the point of death, but no one dared to retaliate. The Pink Skulls naturally saw the situation. Since they were going to suffer under Master Tang Chou's hands, they could reap benefits. If they landed in the hands of the swift army that rejoiced in their misfortune, they would suffer for nothing. The world was that dark. Master Tang Chou had given them the task of suppressing the enemy, and they wished for more disobedient people to come. Who knew that the pink skulls were all crafty. Upon seeing the signs, they all became unyielding and clenched their teeth to endure. The difference in their coordination could not be more than a tenth of a second. Even the position, distance, speed, all of them had extremely strict rules, and even the slightest mistake would cause the lunatic to roar. The setting sun dyed the sky red. Tang Tian directly threw the matters of the barracks to Tang Chou and then ignored them. He could not waste time, he still had many things to do. After fighting for over 9 hours, both parties were already at their limits. The adjutant was excited. The 7th Army had suffered an unprecedented loss, and all of them were holding back a wave of energy. In order to find the other party's flaws, they used the stupidest method, arranging people in each area to count. This lunatic's request was too perverse. 7th Army advance. The Sword Forest stronghold's light balls also shot out like rain. Bu Zifei's face was gloomy. Such a battle was the most bitter. Facing a stronghold that was heavily guarded, other than attacking, there was no other way. This kind of head-on confrontation was achieved with countless lives. Even he didn't have many good ideas. A light bullet landed weakly on the protective shield. Even the hot-tempered Aya did not dare to go against Master Tang Chou. Oh, there's an error in my calculations here. It's not optimal yet. Cannon fodder armies were more suitable for battles that required human lives. To nurture an army for 1,000 days, to use it for a moment, the reason why the vast star continent nurtured so many cannon fodder armies, wasn't it for this moment? He had long been aware of these two speculations. The enemy had many novices, and during the second wave of probing he had faintly sensed it, and during the third wave of probing he had confirmed it. As for the problem of lacking manpower, that was the conclusion he came up with after studying the strongholds. Obviously, the might that the enemy was displaying compared to the theoretical might of the strongholds was far from it. Just that. Well done. Bu Zifei patted the adjutant's shoulder, his face filled with gratification. They have finally grown up. Bang bang bang. Don't worry. Crane smiled and bowed. The black mist that flew out from the minaret coiled around Crane's body, transforming into an elegant black armor, and a few of the mist entered Crane's body, transforming into a black cape that fluttered in the wind. Embroidered clothes and a sword, a young master walking in the night. If we break through the enemy's protective shield, how many casualties will there be? Bu Zifei asked. All of them will be pierced to death with my spear. Ling Su snorted. The silver light that flew through the air struck his body, causing the silver liquid to squirm and transform on the surface of his body, and in the next moment, it transformed into a silver scale armor. Silver armor and spear, white robes and righteousness. The swift army watched the pink skull mercenaries being tortured to death by Master Tang Chou, and secretly rejoiced in their hearts. Thinking about the time when they were being tortured, all of them were watching excitedly from the side. Now that the tables had turned, all of them were excited and excited. This place was a mistake in my design, let's do it again, this time we will. The true deciding factor would always be the elites like the 7th Army. All of them were elites that had spent countless of money to create, and were the true kings of the battlefield. He raised his head to look at the chaotic battlefield and sighed, how many casualties are there today? Bu Zifei's request for reinforcements was sent back to the vast star continent, and upon knowing that the enemy was actually building a stronghold, the continent lord personally gave the order, and the 12th and 15th armies arrived at the same time. The continent lord also knew, to use the elites of the 7th army, to squander them on a place that needed to be filled with lives, it was a huge loss. Victory! Jing Hao raised the drunk on Saint Blood in his hand and bowed to Bing. A bright-colored flame flew out from the sharp tower, and smashed onto Jing Hao, transforming into a sky full of flames. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a bright red armor, a big sword and a heroic song. The defensive barrier of the strongholds shattered, and after a short period of silence, it was followed by a deafening cheer. Hold back a little. Hold back a little. Are you in a rush to die? Timing, you need to understand timing. That red-haired lady as the main commander, you can't even grasp the timing, are you an idiot? The swift army who were initially rejoicing at the side lost their mood to watch the show, and started to sympathize with the pink skull, especially when they thought about how they had to work under such a crazy and perverted man. Just thinking about it made their lives gloomy. Bu Zifei did not linger on the question and asked, How was everyone's rest? But if there was a sentence that Aya felt was the most unreasonable, it would definitely be this. With the addition of the 2 cannon fodder armies, it immediately allowed the 7th Army to break free from the bitter siege. The 12th and 15th Armies faced the Continent Lord's death order, and did not dare to cherish their lives. Oh, what did you guys discuss about the route of attack? Bu Zifei laughed. With regards to the details, he would always throw them to the officers below him. On one hand, it could free him from the trivial calculations, and on the other hand it was a good training for the middle-ranked officers. At least 1,200, maybe even as many as 1,500, the adjutant said. Asshole. Does he think we are a group of machines? When Tang Chou said that with confidence, everyone was stunned. It was not only the Pink Skull, even Xie Yuan and the Swift Army were shocked by Tang Chou's shamelessness. The people of the Pink Skull were a group of wily old foxes, and were proficient in changing the direction of the wind. Being surrounded by a group of fully armed regular armies, how could they dare to move? The first batch of weapons and equipment had already been transported over from Suji Worldwide Commerce. The Swift Army's weapons had been exchanged for cannons and their morale was high. The battle had reached the most intense stage. The defensive barrier of the stronghold was as thin as paper, and the originally densely packed sieging frigates were now sparse. In another 3 hours the enemy's energy barrier should be destroyed. The adjutant gave a precise answer. One after another, the sieging frigates circled around the Sword Forest stronghold, continuously shooting out thick and dazzling light pillars. The light pillars struck the defensive barrier of the Sword Forest stronghold, causing ripples to form on the light barrier. We have done a survey and calculation of the firepower of the stronghold, and finally obtained the distribution of their firepower, and realized that there are 3 areas where their firepower is the weakest. Furthermore, we have repeatedly deduced that they are not even able to unleash 60% of the stronghold's might. And there is a very unique discovery, that is, their fighting capabilities are gradually increasing. Based on these characteristics, we can deduce that firstly, the stronghold is most likely a group of novices, or should I say a portion of them are novices. Secondly, they do not have enough manpower. This is the conclusion that we came up with after calculating the number of attacks in each area. I can make mistakes, but you guys cannot be lazy. Slow, you guys are too slow. Did you guys not eat? Isn't this what you are good at? Why are you so slow? Are you all a bunch of old men? It's your turn. Bing, who was floating in the air, puffed out a smoke ring, his face showing signs of fatigue. The 7th Army who were watching the battle were also shocked by the intense battle. From time to time, the sieging frigates would explode and die. The fire regiments blossoming in the sky were like beautiful flowers. But one of the cruelties of war was that many times, you did not have much leeway to choose. Under the eaves. We only have 200 men left. The adjutant's throat was dry. The number of casualties had exceeded his expectations. Looking at the 4 lonely sieging frigates in the sky, they looked as though they could fall at any time. He could almost imagine the situation inside the stronghold. An outstanding general leading a group of novices. Because Xie Yuan was leading the Swift Army, and was glaring at the side like a tiger watching its prey, a few of the uncooperative fellows had already been dragged out and beaten up, and were currently hanging on the wooden poles on the verge of death. Aya had never thought that there would be a day when their familiar fighting style would change beyond recognition. Every famous general, unless they had no other choice, were not willing to use such a fighting style. This is their mission. The adjutant's expression was normal. The purpose of cannon fodder was to be used here. If not, why would the Continent Lord spend so much money every year to nurture so many cannon fodder armies? The cannon fodder armies were used to do the dirty and tiring work. Their battle cries shook the sky as the 3 of them moved forward. Bang! Bang! Bu Zifei was filled with admiration towards his adjutant, although he was inflexible most of the time, but his cautiousness seemed to be innate. Bu Zifei had never doubted the adjutant's statistics. As for the casualties, as long as they won the battle and their entire army was not destroyed, the Continent Lord would not mistreat them and would definitely replenish them. But if they were to cower in fear, then what awaited them would be the rage of the Continent Lord, and at that time even their families would not be spared. Completely recovered. The adjutant was roused. We have already discussed the route of attack. As long as the defensive barrier is broken, we can take the chance to kill our way in and take back the initiative. She had never thought that the Pink Skull's most adept coordination would actually be able to play a new trick in the hands of the madman. Just that, the madman's request was so high that it made people's hair stand. Chapter 626. After putting on an act and leading the precious Bright Village Regiment to fight for so long, my acting skills are not bad. The theoretical limit of the precious Bright Village Regiment has been completely squeezed out by Bing. He could foresee that after the tempering, the precious Bright Village Regiment's strength would soar by leaps and bounds. Bu Zifei had never looked down on the use of experts. If not, he would not have spent so much effort to build the vanguard unit. All of these arrogant and untamed experts were like thin and sharp daggers. If used well, they would be powerful, but in such a head-on clash, their weakness would be exposed. Rush over. Bu Zifei suddenly thought about the abnormality that he had sensed, and his face turned white. Energy. The stronghold group can control energy. The angry armor-heavy sword was as majestic as a mountain. Dang. The energy barrier shattered. The raging red wave smashed onto a reef and shattered into pieces. Using the sacrifice of 2 cannon fodder armies to exhaust the enemy's strength. If the enemy still had any reserves, they would definitely not sit and watch the defensive barrier shatter. Now that the defensive barrier had shattered, it meant that the enemy was at the end of their rope. But if the stronghold group could control the energy of an entire region, then such a stronghold group would be extremely difficult to break through, at least not something that 2 cannon fodder armies could break through. Controlling the energy of an entire region, that was the ultimate goal of any defense unit. The reason why the 12 ecliptic palaces rarely went through the flames of war was because of the precious cities. Haina Fan Sin Te represented the ancient sect card system, but after 300 years of glory, it disappeared without a trace. Replacing it was Qin Mu's creation of the modern card system. It originated from the even more ancient Rosenberg and had absorbed sufficient nourishment from the ancient sect. It was even more efficient, even more alive, and the card appliances that came after pushed it to a peak. The modern card system was like a greedy beast firmly occupying the era. Generation after generation, no one remembered the ancient glory, the past Haina Fan Sin Te, the past Star Academy. Qin Mu's influence far exceeded any grandmaster in history. His silent backview was like a huge shadow, enveloping generation after generation of new card masters. He was glorious, but what came after him was sorrowful. A full 200 years had passed and there were no more disruptive innovations in the cards. All the card masters had the same question in their hearts: has the card developed to its peak? Jie Shangwan quietly read. There was nothing in the building except some scattered diaries. Bu Zifei admired the commander of the stronghold. The opponent had such a terrible hand, but to be able to fight to such a stage, it could be said that he had reached the pinnacle. If it were him, the situation would probably be even worse. Unless the enemy's goal from the start was not to block their attacks, but to annihilate the 7th Army. Bu Zifei was overwhelmed with shock. How is this possible? How can a single person's strength reach such a powerful level? This was the first direct clash between Heaven's Road's defense system and the armies of the Sacred Saint Galaxy. How good would it be if he could hear such a lesson? Aha, my new student helped me find this variable. It was too amazing. Souls, it's actually souls, there are actually souls here. The raging red wave crashed into the energy barrier of the army. He did not know who designed this cluster of fortresses, but if it was really as he guessed, then this cluster of fortresses was bound to overturn the current system of fortresses. Bing laughed at himself absent-mindedly. It was just an insignificant victory, but he actually started to feel sentimental. Ayaya, come to think of it, Gudu Qiubai has such a high class and Western temperament. It matches my status as a famous general. If the commander were to see this, he would definitely be surprised. In the next moment, Bu Zifei's face changed. The surging energy was like a tide, suddenly surging towards the heavy sword that was raised up high. Impossible. How crazy is the enemy's commander to have such a thought? Suddenly there was a commotion ahead and the troops slowed down. Inside the treasure city, all of the energy was controlled by the Sword Forest stronghold, and the strength of the defenders would be greatly strengthened. I had an argument with my teacher, and in the classical sects, I found a thread of hope to break through the curtain of night. Teacher thought that I was crazy. He is a believer of Qin Mu, and we had an intense argument, so I was chased out of the card-making school. Upon entering the Sword Forest stronghold, Bu Zifei sensed that something was amiss. The energy flow was not right. Seems like the stronghold has many unusual aspects. I plan to break through the stronghold and study it properly. Jia Shengwan's heart was filled with shock. She never thought that the origin of the spirit cards would actually come from another mysterious place. He saw the life of a stubborn old man. Bing, who was in the air, continued to smoke. He did not even bother to look at the intense battle below. I need a variable, just a variable, and I can change everything. Bing tilted his head and thought. He felt that his thinking was too optimistic, and reckoned that it was more likely that he would receive a slap from the commander and then be taught a lesson. Brat, you are so proud of this result. You are truly embarrassing me. And so on. My body is getting weaker by the day. I am dying soon. Last night I dreamt of the card-making school, dreamt of teacher, but a pity I can no longer find my way back. But for some reason, an indescribable loneliness surfaced in his heart. Gu Du Qiu Bai. He and I had an intense argument, just like me and my teacher in the past. Spirit cards, yes, they are great, but they are not what I want. It is the power of life and conviction, not the art of a card. I am a card master in the past, now, and even in death. Bing puffed out a ring of smoke, his thoughts wandering. A brazen guess flashed past his mind like lightning, a bone-chilling intent surging up his spine. I have trained my troops and obtained victory. I have perfectly achieved all my goals. I should be happy. Drunk on Saint blood trembled. The dim sword body lit up with a bewitching red light aura. The surging energy was dyed red. They revolved around Jing Hao, transforming into a gigantic red vortex. The energy converging around Jing Hao's body was too terrifying. As the concentration of the energy was too high, everyone's vision was distorted as though they were being roasted by the high temperature. It was a bewitching blood energy storm, causing everyone's hair to stand. Are you lonely? Bu Zifei's face flushed red. The soldiers around him swayed at the same time. All of them looked as though they were drunk. The opponent raised the big sword in his hand. Bu Zifei said decisively, at that moment the most important thing was time. They could not give the opponent time to recover. The opponent had sent out experts with the goal of delaying their advance, to give the soldiers in the stronghold time to recover. Bang! To the three of them it was a rare opportunity. The energy gathered in the Sword Forest stronghold far surpassed that of Tang Tian's, and even surpassed any of the treasured cities in the 12 ecliptic palaces. Bing's face revealed a faint smile. What the hell is this place? It is truly terrible. Bu Zifei immediately activated his energy barrier, but he was too late. The few soldiers at the front were instantly engulfed by the raging red wave. In front of them, a tall and sturdy bright red figure stood in the middle of the road. Yes, this is a brand new card, completely different from the previous cards. It does not require any apparatus, it does not require an energy card, it does not require anything. It is one of a kind, unique like a life. It makes people revere it. He was filled with curiosity towards the stronghold. Bu Zifei's face changed, and just as he spoke, Jing Hao raised drunk on Saint blood and slashed down fiercely. The vast star continent who had lost 2 fulcrums would quickly be in trouble. The power to protect their wealth would be weakened, and the wealth would naturally attract the covetous eyes of all parties, and the vast star continent would quickly fall into a situation where they could not even fend for themselves. For some reason a phrase surfaced in Bu Zifei's mind. One man holding the pass 10,000 cannot open it. But he could not help but laugh, to think that he would have such an unreliable thought. This should be the opponent's final trump card, but in Bu Zifei's eyes, the scene in front of him was filled with the feeling of a cornered beast fighting. In the sky above the main stronghold, Bing sat cross-legged, the cigarette in his mouth flickering in the wind. One hand supporting his chin, he gazed into the distance, seemingly in a daze. He did not care about the battle below. His goal from the start was to wipe out the 7th Army. If we were to say that the 8th Army was the first fulcrum, then the 7th Army was the second. They did not meet with any resistance. Bu Zifei did not entangle with the other sword strongholds, but ordered his troops to head straight for the main stronghold. The core of the stronghold was definitely the main stronghold in the center, and as long as the main stronghold was breached, the entire stronghold would crumble. And the opponent would definitely gather their last strength in the main stronghold and make their last struggle. The star door was sealed. I know it was definitely done by him. He wants to become the ruler of that world, just like Qinmu, but a pity he does not understand why Qinmu is so strong. Although there was something amiss, but Bu Zifei did not think that the opponent could turn the tables. The manpower in the opponent's hands had already been squeezed dry. A general was like a chef, using ingredients to create food. A famous general was like a more powerful chef. Maybe the food he made was more delicious, maybe he had a unique use of ingredients, but if he did not have the ingredients he could only watch helplessly. He purposely revealed 3 flaws so that the 3 of them could have ample space to fight. The Sword Forest stronghold had opened up the treasure city, and the armor had been tempered by the energy for a period of time, and had become even stronger. 2 loud explosions sounded out at the same time, the other 2 directions lit up with dazzling light auras, and faintly heard screams, causing Bu Zifei's heart to sink. Be careful. The bewitching red energy was like a flood that had burst a dam. The red raging wave brought along a low and terrifying roar. It followed along the streets and smashed down. They were the users of the energy storm, and furthermore, it was an unprecedented and powerful energy storm, and such an experience was definitely a precious experience. I have decided to once again search for the true essence of the classical faction. I firmly believe that there is an answer there. I followed Hai Na Fan Sin Ti's footsteps, and searched for the words he left behind. Countless energy flows flowed past the tall spires. The sky looked as though it was covered by a river. The trickles flowed endlessly. On the last page of the diary, 4 crooked words were written. Chapter 627. The smile on eldest young noble's face disappeared, and his expression became stern. The prerequisite is that I do not harm the benefits of White Sands, regardless of whether I am the future White Sands continent lord or a corpse. I will not harm the benefits of White Sands. As for He Ying and Lady Ro, Tang Tian did not place them in his eyes, as the enmity between them had long been formed. As for what Tang Tian said, it was all lies to make the godlike young lad lower his head to He Ying. Tang Tian stared at eldest young noble, who did not dodge and calmly welcomed Tang Tian's gaze. That's it. Eldest young noble could not believe his own ears. The leader of the guards had followed Qin Yuran for many years, and knew that although Miss Yuran was a woman, her words carried enormous weight and she was extremely loyal. All of them had received Miss Yuran's kindness in the past few years. He was originally injured in the battlefield and wandered the streets and was saved by Qin Yuran. Qin Yuran saw that he was talented and allowed him to lead the guards. Everyone knew that the situation was dire and all of their faces congealed. They had thought of the possibility of the other party making a move, but no one expected He Ying to be so daring. Qin Yuran was extremely anxious. At the same time, Xia heaved a sigh of relief. She could not understand Meng Nan at all, and no matter what strange actions he did or what strange request he made, she would not be surprised. The ladies seemed to have found their backbone, and like a flock of startled birds, they rushed into the hall. Qin Yuran, who was teaching the ladies how to sing, suddenly noticed the commotion outside. She walked out of the hall and into the courtyard. When she saw the many wooden houses in the sky, enveloped in raging flames, black smoke billowing. What a freak! Eldest young noble reacted quickly and immediately said, Mr. Meng, if you have any suggestions, please speak. The leader of the guard's face changed. Yes. Eldest young noble's self-mocking and honest attitude made people have a good impression of him. But at that moment he did not provoke eldest young noble and immediately made a decision. Let's go out of the city, we are going to the barracks. Who knew that Tang Tian's tone would change? Then let's talk about the problem of remuneration. Me. Tang Tian was surprised and pointed to eldest young noble. Protect him? Shortly after, the sounds of intense fighting could be heard from outside the courtyard. Everyone's expression changed slightly as they looked at each other. Tang Tian stood up and said in a deep voice, Let's go and take a look. Looking at the 2 stunned people, Tang Tian's expression was unfriendly. Don't tell me that I helped for free? Some of the timid women around them had already begun to cry and panic was spreading. The leader of the guards bowed to Qin Yuran, then turned and strode forward, starting to command the guards to set up their defense. Qin Yuran called for the leader of the guards and said sternly, From now on, all the guards and servants of the families will be under your command. You only have one mission. Stand guard outside and don't let anyone get close. Anyone who tries to attack the manor will be killed without mercy. Tang Tian was very satisfied with eldest young master's tactfulness. He coughed lightly and said, Eldest young master is also a person of status. The price to protect such an important person is definitely not low. We will not beat around the bush. I think the ones who dare to take action against eldest young master must be He Ying and Lady Ro. Because of eldest young master, I have made such a strong enemy. Tell me, isn't that a huge sacrifice for me? All the young ladies' faces turned pale. Qin Yu Ran's heart jumped. She immediately took out her communication plate, but it did not have any reaction. What's going on? Auntie Chia was shocked. Big brother Meng, you have to come quickly. Last night, the Su family's trading group was suddenly attacked by pirates. They were only half a day's journey from White Sands, and only 6 of them managed to escape. Master Suobai's first army has already moved out, but before they leave, Master Suobai hopes that you can protect eldest young master for a period of time. Tang Tian thought about it and agreed. Eldest young noble seemed to be the successor, but for the past few years he had been suppressed by He Ying and Lady Ro and lived a miserable life. He wanted money but had no money, he wanted people but had no one. If not for the support of the Ling family and Suobai, he would have been killed long ago. To her, the White Sands continent was extremely foreign, and she did not know who she could trust. Xia's face was extremely ugly. Qin Yu Ran took a deep breath and shouted, "Enter the hall. Everyone enter the hall." Tang Tian thought for a moment, then said with a straight face, "If eldest young master becomes the new continent lord, I hope to obtain White Sands' friendship." "Yes." Xia then explained, "I have just taken over the 5th army and need some time to completely grasp it. Master, you have 2 armies here and an outstanding general like General Xie Yu, and Master Suobai believes that Master has the strength to protect eldest young master. In White Sands, regardless of what to buy or sell, it was extremely convenient. To the Shang continent it was a huge help. The Suji worldwide commerce only sold weapons, and there were many other things that needed to be bought from other channels. The White Sands continent held an important position in the southern region, and compared to the vast Star continent, the White Sands continent's influence in the southern region was much higher. Qin Yu Ran bit her lips tightly. She knew that if it was a scheme, then the mastermind would definitely not let the Moon Manor go. All of these ladies were the best bargaining chips for all the big families in the White Sands continent. That was worse than killing Tang Tian. She immediately called for her most trusted bodyguard and said softly, "Go to the Ling family courtyard immediately and seek help from Mr. Meng Nan." Seeing the bodyguard leave, Qin Yu Ran was startled. She did not expect that in such a dangerous situation, the first person she thought of was actually Big Brother Meng. 2 people are injured. One-on-one they are not weaker than us. The one who replied was Ah Lung. He was temporarily in charge. His expression was not good. They should be mercenaries, they are veterans. He was rejoicing in his heart. Out of cautiousness, the Ling family courtyard's defenses were extremely tight, completely according to the standard battlefield requirements. All of the meticulously arranged hidden sentries were of great use. If not, the price they had to pay would definitely not be just 2 casualties. Qin Yu Ran's tone was stern. "Everything points to disaster, but tell everyone whoever dies in battle, I will take care of their family. If they want to enter, they will have to step over this subordinate's corpse." Tang Tian glanced at him. "You don't have any money or power, you can't even exchange for all of this. How are the casualties? How are their strikes?" Tang Tian asked. Xia replied respectfully. She was currently representing Master Suobai, and naturally did not dare to use her usual attitude. Eldest young noble who was by the side immediately bowed to Tang Tian. It's fine, Mr. Meng, wherever you go I will follow." Eldest young noble immediately expressed. Tang Tian looked at eldest young noble sympathetically. "What does he want to do? He wants to kill me." When Tang Tian rushed over, the battle outside the courtyard had already ended, leaving behind a few corpses on the ground and blood stains all over the place. Eldest young noble Xia and the rest all revealed looks of joy. Luckily, the Moon Manor was the most luxurious and largest manor in White Sands City, and had sufficient guest rooms. Every day there would be various salons and concerts, and it was a paradise for women, but a forbidden ground for men. Tang Tian listened to his subordinate's report, his face expressionless. Xia could not help but say, "You are already their mortal enemy." Their only hope was Big Brother Meng. The group of people suddenly appeared and attacked the underworld continent's demonic mounts without any warning. Luckily, in this period of time, the residents around the courtyard had already moved away. The underworld continent's demonic mounts were extremely vigilant, and when the group of people approached, they were immediately sensed. Eldest young noble heaved a sigh of relief. He was worried that Meng Nan would take the chance to raise conditions that he could not accept. Master Suobai had already discussed with him, And what surprised him was that Master Suo Bai was extremely confident in Meng Nan. Since your most valuable asset is your identity as a successor, then we can only use that. Tang Tian suddenly felt that White Sands was a good ally. It was not far from the Shang continent and was flourishing with businesses. And the White Sands continent's terrain was good for defense, unlike the vast Star continent where there were gaps everywhere. Ally in the southern region, it's that simple. Tang Tian thought for a moment. Maybe I can sell some things through you guys, or maybe I can buy some things through you guys. Being an ally and using White Sands business channels, the price was not high, but rather too low. Explosions sounded out from afar and thick black smoke rose up from many places. White Sands City was in chaos. Eldest young noble's face turned green. What are they trying to do? What are they trying to do? A look of admiration flashed past Tang Tian's eyes. In truth, he did not have any impression of the eldest young noble of the continent lord previously. But at that moment he could not help but size up the eldest young noble who did not have any sense of existence. My opponent is the honorable martial continent, such a colossus, and it is necessary to rope in all helpers. On the contrary, eldest young noble revealed a look of admiration. I like Mr. Meng's attitude. Friendship was friendship and business was business. He was absolutely right. But you know my situation, Mr. Meng. I do not lack in daily expenses, but it is only a few 100 million. Compared to Mr. Meng, I am extremely poor. Other than my identity as a successor, I do not have any other valuable assets. The Moon Manor was Qin Yu Rant's residence, and currently, it had become the highest-class salon in the entire White Sands continent, with countless of young ladies coming here just to catch a glimpse of Qin Yu Rant's beauty. And for the ladies with deep backgrounds, they would just stay in the guest rooms. Eldest young noble's eyes were clear. He looked refined like a teacher, and not the successor of a continent lord. Tang Tian scratched his chin. If he was not like Crane or Bing, he would definitely not be He Ying-ro's opponent. Tang Tian did not know whether to laugh or cry at the ridiculous words. I am very busy, where would I find the time to take care of him? Tang Tian scoffed. Little Ling Xia, our friendship is friendship, but eldest young noble and I are doing business and business is business. If you say that He Ying and the rest do not like me, I will admit it, but if I were to take the initiative to leave the White Sands continent, He Ying and the rest will definitely not find trouble with me and might even give me some benefits. She could smell the thick smell of a scheme. Eldest young noble was immediately embarrassed. Tang Tian stared at the two of them for a